Why is false belief in the Jewish question bad to hold? How does Nick Fuentes believe the Jewish question works? Do you believe that Nick Fuentes is anti-Semitic? Do you believe Nick Fuentes makes anti-Semitic arguments? Why did you ban this person? I recognize the critique you made, and I think it's a good point. So then I'm gonna turn the question on you then.
You're kind of like a Nazi. I've given him oh God, he's like, thank God he's coming out. Okay, I'm not a Nazi because I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want any camps, and that might be true. And now I'm like, I brought in this external word with all this external content that I've lost control of now. And now what I could do is I go like, well, hold on, wait. I'm just defining Nazi insofar as it means that now we're fighting over the definitions of the words, different people in different, like, I've muddied the waters.
I mean, I recognize this critique that you made before. Do you think that there's no value to labels in a political setting?
How can I beat MrBeast?
First of all, tips out, because we're going to be talking about debate theory, okay?
Tipping! I am tipping hard, yes.
Exactly. So this is a little bit of, it's probably a very fundamental theory that I learned when I did like high school debate.
Okay.
But I think that the words are actually the concepts are actually pretty relevant.
Sure.
So beyond like the premise like conclusion, like that type of thing of argumentation, there's another thing which has more to do with like the rhetoric of delivering an argument more than necessarily like its validity or its soundness.
Yeah.
And two elements there are the mechanistic elements of the argument and then an impact part of the argument. So when I say mechanization, I essentially mean that this is when you explain how your argument works. You explain that this is something that logically follows. You prove why something is like true or not true. It's the actual thing that talks about like, what are you trying to demonstrate? What are you trying to prove?
Okay.
And I think you do this really well. And I think that that's one of the major things that a lot of people might forego, and they might go just straight up for the latter part of this, which is impact. Mm-hmm. And the part of this is past demonstrating and doing the mechanization for your argument. You explain the importance of what you just explained, and you demonstrate essentially like the broader societal impact in that sense. Mm-hmm. So for like an example of this, I could just ask you this. So why is, for example, a false belief in the Jewish question bad to hold?
Okay. Since we're having a very formal conversation, I need to ask what you mean when you say bad.
What parts of this do you find to be, what consequences of holding this belief do you find to be like morally bad consequences? Like things you would like to avoid? What are the negative externalities of holding the belief that like the Jewish question is real?
Okay. I'm just gonna call this obfuscation because that's what everybody says. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently I'm obfuscating everything now. When you ask me why are Jewish conspiracy things bad, there are a couple of different levels that I'll view that on. So epistemically, I would say that Jewish conspiracies are bad because typically in order to believe in them, you have to be running down very irrational trains of thought. You're either not asking for or looking for the right evidence for a belief, or you're falling into certain cognitive pitfalls to believe certain things that you shouldn't be, or there's a whole host of other types of reasons. You're getting your truth from bad sources, so you have an inability to analyze evidence correctly, or you're not analyzing evidence, you're just taking descriptive statements to be true at face value from other people you agree with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So epistemically, when you say, why are Jewish conspiracies bad, that'd be one thing I would say. Now, if you want to ask a further question, well, why is it bad to believe different things on an epistemic level, then I would say, well, that's bad because if you're susceptible to bad ideas here, you're susceptible to bad ideas anywhere. And those types of bad thoughts, those incongruent epistemic beliefs are going to make it impossible for two sound minds to agree on things that are descriptively true, right? Like whether or not Jewish people are good or bad can be an ethics debate, but whether or not Jewish people are involved in a conspiracy ought to be something that two reasonable minds should agree on. So on an epistemic level, that's why it's bad. On a moral or ethical level, when you say, why are believing in Jewish conspiracies bad? Well, if they're true, it's not really bad to believe in them. But if they're bad, it's bad to believe in them. Because if you think that a group of people is conspiring against our people, morally, the road that is a very short walk down to is we ought to be able to take some sort of self-defensive action against that group of people. So it invites or even begs violence or some other sort of retribution towards that group. So Jewish conspiracies are bad because to believe in them requires poor epistemic grounding, and they're bad because the ethical arguments past believing that Jewish conspiracies are real lead us down paths of violence or violent retribution or whatever or real weird political things or state violence that I don't agree with and I think are bad. That would be my full answer to that question.
Yeah,
okay.
And I think that's a really good answer.
Okay.
So now, what does this have to do with what I explained previously? Well, the first thing you mentioned when you talked about the issues with epistemics and with grounding your beliefs in reality and essentially believing in things that can't be verified and checked by other people, and you can't actually build like a sound and good fundamental like reality that you can then base your worldview off of and build off of. That has to do a lot with the mechanization, right? Because there you're essentially explaining how if in an argument against a Jewish question, why it doesn't hold up. Why there's flaws in this and this, the evidence is insufficient, whatever, yada yada yada, up until perpetuity. But unless you also talk about like the impact, unless you also make the argument that okay, so this is why the belief is like an incorrect belief to have. It's like it doesn't hold up. It doesn't seem to be reflective of what's actually going on in the real world. Unless you also be like, and furthermore, this belief also contributes to an environment where you're essentially falsely identifying whatever you want to call Jewish people, probably an ethnic group in this case, for being responsible for a wide range of social ills and therefore providing justification for persecutorial action against that social group.
Yeah.
And given that that's something we want to avoid in like in a liberal democratic society, that impact is really morally reprehensible. And if you don't do that second impact there, then you run into an issue where, let's say you have an argument about Jewish question, and then you have an argument about trickle-down economics, for instance. Both of these are like unsound in the sense that they're both not really reflective of reality, like good economic practice or good social analysis. But at the same time, their kind of moral value of believing to them, like of them in the real world, is going to be vastly different, right? One is going to result in the persecution of a group of people for their ethnicity, and the other one is going to result in bad economic policy that sure is going to have some negative effects as well, but it's not quite going to be the same. And I feel that you're really good with the mechanization part because you will engage with arguments on their grounds in a way that most people will not. A lot of people will just start at the impact and they will leave it with there. Oh, let's have an argument about the Jewish question. And they're like, sorry, that's like that it's anti-Semitism. And that's their argument, essentially. It's anti-Semitism. So they start at the impact and then kind of have that do the entire mechanization bit. But unless you also have the impact part there, then you kind of get a perception, like a rhetorical perception, that the weight of incorrect beliefs are kind of equalized there. Like believing the Jewish question might be kind of as bad as believing in, for example, rent control or trickle-down economics, because you don't really flesh out the impacts in that sense. And I can understand why you have a greater focus on the mechanization side of things, because there's so many people, particularly left-leaning people, that only do the impact and kind of forego the mechanization. But I think that including both of them is probably pretty important.
Yeah, I can do the impact, but the impact is very difficult because, one, the mechanization part probably means before the argument happens, they don't agree with the impact to some extent. Right? Because they've got a whole reason for why. So that's one big thing. I don't know if I'm going to win anybody over 100% with the mechanization enough to hit them with the impact first. And then two, the impact still has to fit within their framework, and it's exposing me to more potential risk or leak in my argument. So I'm trying to think of an example. I think there are probably ways that I could do this that might be effective, but I'd have to think specifically. It'd have to be somebody that's pretty closely morally aligned with me. So this might be an example. So I had an argument with Fuentes over including women in his movement, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to do part one is the way that I went about this argument, and then part two would be the part that you would want me to add, okay? So part one would be, well, I think you should include women in your movement because it makes your movement larger. Probably is going to attract more men. There's going to be a lot of extra talent because there are going to be some women that are effective at politics, like Laura Loomer was the person that Fuentes went to support, right? There's going to be some women that are probably good at politics, and you want to include that talent. It's going to make your movement stronger. That might be like the mechanization part. The impact at the end is you might want me to add, if it was the case that women can contribute in the same way as men, wouldn't it be kind of fucked up to like leave them out of the movement? Like, wouldn't that just be kind of wrong to like deprive them of the opportunity to function in that space? And the impact is true, but I'm already working within this like Christian worldview. And for them listening, I don't know how many of them are going to think, well, like, no, actually, I don't think it would be wrong to leave women out. Even if women could contribute, I think there are other good reasons because I'm in such a different moral framework. When I hit that impact statement, I have to make sure that it is fully congruent with the mechanization argument I gave earlier and that it's still fitting within their moral framework. And if we're really far apart, that's going to be really hard. But if we're much closer together, then I think I could probably do better with the impact statements. Maybe I already do, but I could probably do better on the impact statements if we're closer morally together. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because and I think what you said was really good there, right? Because if you get ahead of yourself with the impact, then you're lost, because then you're appealing to something like a quality or like a sentiment that you both don't share, and then you're just not meeting each other there. But so you mentioned two things. I think initially you said that what if they don't buy into the impact, and then what was the second point you mentioned right when I finished my thing about impact?
That the mechanization argument works, but if I want them to buy into the impact, we have to either have like a shared moral framework, basically, that coincide. Okay. If I can make it coincide with their morals and my mechanization, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So the important thing is, of course, you must lay out a convincing mechanistic argument first, because if you just go by the impact in the beginning, you're lost. But the impact can be an important like follow up, like kind of like an alley-oop, so to say, to your mechanization, because you're really good at making mechanical arguments. And once you've made the mechanical arguments, and let's say you have somebody and they buy you on the mechanical argument, they're like, okay, yeah, you're right. There's something wrong with my argument. There's something that's not really true here, or not reflective, or I'm doing something that's counterproductive or not efficient or whatever. But at that point in time, the only bad or the only negative that's kind of associated with that is, okay, I believe something that may not be entirely efficient or may not be entirely true. And a lot of people are kind of comfortable with that, right? So once you've kind of opened up and been like, okay, not only is this belief, there's an error in the way that you think that this applies, or something like that, but there's also an extra weight added to continuing to believe in that. That might be effective at actually getting people to move past that. But I do agree with what you're saying, how you need to have like some form of common buy-in for the impact to work out at all.
So I think this is not. I think this is not true. When you said people are comfortable with untrue things, I think that people are actually very uncomfortable with untrue things, and I think what happens is they do a lot of work in their mind to make it true. So like we might say that like for like the 9/11 stuff, how can you believe that the government was all knowing and all powerful and able to do all of that, but like they made the World Trade Center building 7 collapse like 5 hours later? Why couldn't they coordinate that better, right? So that's kind of weird. Or why, like, you might think that, but in their mind they're not thinking like, oh fuck, that's really hard to reconcile, I'm just gonna have to hold these two contradictory thoughts. Instead in their mind they're like, well no, they probably they'll make an excuse. They'll say like, oh well, they probably made it happen later for this reason, and now it's no longer two contradictory thoughts. They try to ease the dissonance as much as possible, right?
Sure, but at the same time, maybe I'm misremembering or misunderstood what he said, but didn't at one point Nick say that maybe this isn't true, but it's kind of my job to push against like the mainstream narrative. And it sounded there like he kind of had like a presupposed belief and what it was going to end up with.
The way I see it, there is so much moving against those trends that if I'm being extra, if I have a superfluous amount of skepticism, or I push a conspiracy, it's not totally sourced or whatever, it's like, well, you could turn on the television, any channel, any day of the week, and get the government line and get the thing that you're pushing. So it's my job to be the bulwark and be the reactionary position against all of it.
And it feels like it's his mission to push that narrative no matter what.
Yeah,
and I think that's pretty demonstrative of like being okay with things not being accurate, right?
Yeah, that's kind of true. Nick is a huge exception though, right? Because he's like an ideological leader here. His mind is not going to be like most people. I think that if you confront the vast majority of people on their beliefs, they're not going to say that like, yeah, I have some thoughts that are kind of like irreconcilable. They will have done all of the mental work necessary. It's where the term mental gymnastics comes from. They're going to do all the mental work necessary to make those beliefs like work. And I feel like in terms of emails that I've gotten from people, generally the way that I usually turn people, and this isn't to say, by the way, that that impact arguments wouldn't work or impact statements wouldn't work, because maybe they wouldn't, I just haven't tried it enough, but usually it's on the mechanistic part. When I start to introduce confusion, people will work to reconcile that confusion, and sometimes the reconciliation requires them to abandon whatever content creator or ideological movement they're a part of. It'll be like, hey, I saw your debate with Fuentes or Lauren Southern or this Tanky or whatever, and after I watched it, like, you brought up some questions and it was kind of weird and I didn't really have answers for them, and I kind of looked around and blah, 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 and then eventually you kind of drift out of those movements, because that's what happens with incongruencies. That's how every atheist is born, right? You start out in a religious movement and then eventually you're asking enough questions, like, fuck, and then you kind of drift out. And I think that's always my goal, is on the mechanism part, to just make you feel a little bit uneasy about your ideas, such that the resolution of those inconsistencies invariably requires you to fall out. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah, I see what you mean there. So I could see the impact thing going either way. It could be a thing. Well, I'm not sure actually. I think that at worst, having an incorrect impact is kind of just is kind of just not going to do anything, right? Because if they don't share it, they're just going to be like, I literally don't care, right? I don't think it's likely to turn people off unless you're so very far away that you just expressing and working within a value system is going to make them be like, oh, what the fuck, like, that's pretty fucked up. But
it's hard to say because the impact, and this is where I'm starting to force more conversations. I think we need to work within the framework of examples, because I can think of ways that an incorrect impact statement could really fuck you up. Like, let's say that we where I could trip and stumble into a whole other host of arguments. Let's say we're arguing about like white people being allowed to advocate for themselves. Like, I think I should be able to say white power or white rights or whatever without it being racist. And you have that whole argument. And let's say that I go through the mechanistic argument and I give the examples like, well, white people historically that have done this are kind of shady. White people don't really need to advocate for themselves as a group. It's more subgroups that need to advocate for themselves. Let's say I make a really good mechanistic argument. Then let's say at the very end, it's like, okay, we've done all that. And then let's say at the very end, I'm like, it's a little bit strange, I think, to have like majority groups in power come out and advocate on behalf of their own interests when as a group they don't really need to. Like, it almost feels like they're attacking other groups through doing that. Like, you're kind of protesting their protests, and we probably don't want to take away issues from like other groups in society or whatever. Let's say that's some kind of.
I would say that's a bad impact.
What could the yeah, sure, well, give me a possible effective impact statement. Yeah.
So for example, in that instance, I think the issue with that is you're focusing on kind of it's kind of the difference between when people talk about, should we say white privilege or should you talk about like a minority penalty, right? How focusing on white privilege is going to make, you know, the people who need to hear it the most, they're the ones that have this quote unquote privilege. So they're kind of the people being targeted by that statement. In the way that you were talking about it, then presumably it would be like a white person making this argument about white power, why this is okay and whatever. So then when you make that argument, well, with hegemonic groups are making this and it's kind of like weird or whatever, you're attacking them personally. But if you frame it in the sense of like, so because ideally we want to have a society where you see that minority groups are able to advocate for their own interests in a different way because of the fact that they're in a fundamentally different position societally, so that they can rise up and be able to live in parity with so you focus on the minority, you don't focus on them as a person, like the opposition there. You don't ascribe anything to them. I think that's probably going to be a lot more efficient.
Okay, gotcha. Let's say that you go that route and you focus on like the fact that minority groups should be able to advocate for their interests or whatever. Let's say that you do that. It feels like when you hit that part of the argument, you introduce this world where now there's other moral arguments being made. It's like where the whole everything for the mechanical shit gets tossed aside, and now people are saying like, well, hold on, like, I don't know if I feel like it's okay that minority groups should be able to advocate for themselves and I'm not allowed to advocate for myself. Like, that actually feels wrong.
Well, ideally,
you
should have explained that in the mechanization, right? Because that's the argument that you're having. You're arguing about why saying, like, you know, white power and whatever isn't okay. So that should have been something that's in the mechanization, no?
If you cover it well enough, well, if you're hitting it that effectively in the mechanization argument that you're dealing with that, then what is the purpose, I guess, of the impact statement at the end then? Yeah,
so that's what I was saying. I said at the worst case, I think that the impact can just be non-effective. It just doesn't add anything because you just don't meet. But I think in the best case, it can add an extra pressure for them to really like, because moving off a position is difficult. Moving off a position can take quite a bit of time. And I think that adding like a moral weight through an impact statement can add like an extra pressure that makes people more incentivized towards like really critically examining and potentially expediting that process of potentially moving off this belief. When otherwise you might just be like, okay, you know, there's just some potential issues and flaws in this that may not logically make sense. Whereas with the good impact statement, it's okay, there's some flaws logically, things that don't make sense. And also through continuing to perpetuate and believe this idea, I'm also contributing to this moral harm. Right. So
yeah, I guess it's not. I can think about that as like hitting up with like the mutually compatible kind of moral statement at the end. Maybe I just have to think of the argument. I'll keep it in mind more, I guess, in a future debate if I feel like I can throw that in at the end. Yeah, it'll just depend on who I'm arguing with and what the argument is, but sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then to also explain how this relates to maybe some of the things we're seeing right now, and that's because a lot of the people, I think, that who see you make the arguments, they see you do the nice mechanistic arguments. But because they don't see you maybe do the impact to the same extent, that's why people will look at, you know, some of the debates you've had with Nick Fuentes and still complain over like, oh, you're not pushing back enough, you're not being direct enough, you're not being clear enough, because you're doing everything nice on the factual grounds, but you're not really getting to the moral weight of the beliefs that you're discussing. So that could be another thing. Of course, I don't know if you probably don't care at all about those types of people and their perceptions, because that's not who you're trying to reach. And also you don't seem to just care about those people generally. So, I mean, I don't know how much you're going to take into consideration in this, but I think this could be like a good explanation. Maybe you can keep in mind that this might be why people get the perception that even though you feel like, oh, I'm doing so much pushback against them, people still end up running around and saying like, oh, Destiny didn't push hard enough or whatever.
Yeah,
now,
maybe because when they're listening to a debate
but
and they already agree with me, the mechanization part doesn't make them feel any better because they don't even give a fuck about that. They're looking for the impact because it's all a moral thing to them anyway, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that
so
that
positive
you and it wasn't it.
Positive impact statements basically is a more elaborate way of me saying like Nick bad in a way that the audience hears and they're like, oh, thank God, and then it kind of like solidifies their position. That could be possible too, sure.
Yeah, exactly. But once again, just to be hyper clear, a good impact statement is an impact statement is really contingent on a good mechanism.
Yeah, and it's going to be depending how far. I don't mean that I would just say Nick bad at the end, but it would have to be an effectively done. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Okay, cool. Okay, so that was the chill part. That was the tips out now. No more debate theory, I don't think. The other thing I wanted to talk about was my documents and quote docs in general. I've gotten a bit of, so I haven't kept up super much. I've had a few busy days, and you've put a lot of content about this recently in discussions with Mr. Girl and the rest of it. How do you feel about my document? Do you think it's a good piece of information to utilize? Do you think it paints the wrong picture? How do you feel about it?
I went through a few things, but I'm generally not in favor of, like, I'm more in favor of like essay format stuff when it comes to writing something persuasive than like a bunch of quotes. Just because I feel like it's a better way to contend with or grasp or understand like a certain set of positions. Not to say that those can't be effective in like convincing people of some things or whatever, but like for instance, when I try to understand like Hassan's position on something or Vosh's position on something, I'm usually watching like, for in the case of Vosh or even Hassan, it'll be hours and hours of video to get like a pretty fleshed out understanding of what they're saying. And you know, if somebody asks me like, well, what does Vosh believe about this, or what does Hassan believe about that? Like, I'll be able to tell you like, well, you know, I watched him talk about this speech here, and I think that he does this thing here, and I think he believes this here, and I think that he probably believes that for that and that and that. And I can give you like a really good reason why. But if somebody's like, well, why does this guy believe this? And you're like, well, here's 7 quotes from that dude. Like, especially when it comes to streamers or people doing hours and hours and hours of content, like, I don't care as much about like quotes because I don't know if that's really getting me to the essence of what they believe as much. It's kind of my issue, generally.
I agree with what you say. Typically, additional textual analysis will be helpful, whatever you're analyzing, for sure. However, I will say that there might be a bit of a difference between the type of issues and beliefs you're thinking of when you talk about Vosh and Hassan versus you're thinking of when we're having these discussions with Fuentes. So what I mean by this, if the question was, how does Nick Fuentes believe the Jewish question works? Like, how exactly? Like, where are the cabals located? How many people? Where is the money being sent or whatever? I agree in that situation, quotes will not cut it. But if the question is, does Nick Fuentes hold like bigoted or conspiracy theory, Jewish question-esque beliefs about Jewish people, then I think that the quotes in that instance more than enough proves it, right? Because there is not about trying to get like a deep and contextual understanding about how this belief really works and what the details of his belief are. You're just trying to understand whether or not he has the belief. I
mean, like, I understand that, but like, I think it's shit. Hold on, I'm trying to think of a way to say this. I'll just say this. This is going to sound really condescending, but I don't mean it to sound that way. I think that might be good enough for a lot of people. That's not enough for me. I need more than that. I usually want more than that. When I'm analyzing people's stuff, I really truly want to know what they mean or believe. Like when that, it's very easy to call, I keep wanting to say Rashid Tlaib, but it's not, it's the other one. The Jews have hypnotized the world or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No idea.
It was one of the squad, but, Ilhan Omar made that statement about Israel, about how Jews had hypnotized the world or whatever. And, that quote is very fucking weird. When I saw that quote, I was like, that's really strange. But just seeing the quote and then just seeing the tweet about the quote, that's not enough, right? So what I'm thinking is like, okay, well, hold on. So she's talking about Israel. Just because you're anti-Zionist doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. Just because you hate Israel doesn't mean you hate Jewish people. So it's like, well, what other quotes can we find about, or what other speeches, or what other statements has she made relating to this or that? And then these are usually the types of things that I'm trying to like go through to ascertain like, what is your opinion? It's never going to be enough to just like have a quote, especially once you get into like internet humor and shit. Because now we can like, you can make Vosh sound like he believes anything. You can make me sound like I believe anything, depending on like the quotes you're going to give. So I'd rather, now I'm not saying that a quote is wrong.
I'm going to push back a little bit here,
go.
because I believe that that's true. You can make it look like anyone believes anything if you take things out of context. Do you believe that any of the quotes I've included in my document are taken out of context?
Well, but that's hard, because when you provide a joke, how am I supposed to evaluate the context of that?
That's true. However, I think at some point when you have like dozens and dozens and dozens of jokes about the same like bigoted core claim, in addition to like multiple pieces of content, or said person in question talks about the importance of irony and jokes in like slowly and subtly, like instilling political beliefs like inside an audience, I think at that point it gets. I think at that point the evidence is pretty high enough. Assuming that what you're trying to prove is just that they have this belief, not that you're trying to get an in-depth understanding. So, for example, this wouldn't be enough if I were to debate Nick Fuentes on the Jewish question. These quotes are fucking nothing. Okay, these are worthless.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to figure out whether or not Nick is bigoted against Jewish people, then I think they do.
Possibly. There are some statements that I think I could say like yes, 100%. Like if you were just like, does Fuentes engage in anti-Semitic humor? The answer is obviously yes. Does Fuentes engage in anti-Semitic humor that could point people in a direction or lead them down a road of anti-Semitism? Absolutely, the answer is yes. Is Fuentes a Nazi because he's that anti-Semitic? Oof. Is he actually like super anti-Semitic, or is a lot of it just like really edgy humor? Like at this point, there's two things going here. One, I need to dig a lot deeper for me to be satisfied knowing for sure. But two, I don't really care. Rather than try to figure out if he's anti-Semitic, I think I would just attack him on the anti-Semitic humor. I would attack him on the anti-Semitic implications, or I would just attack him on his like concrete positions about Jewish people. Because Nick has a lot of concrete Jewish positions about Jewish people that I would attack, like things related to Jewish conspiracy theories or like fucking 9/11 or whatever. Like I can fight on these grounds, and I don't have to do any guesswork at all. Why would I even waste my time trying to divine whether or not he's truly anti-Semitic or truly anti-Israel or anti-Jewish or whatever, when I can just go with the things he said and fight on those grounds?
Okay, so I guess this kind of stems to the main issue then. Do you believe that Nick Fuentes is anti-Semitic?
I don't know, but I haven't like thought about it a ton. I'm not sure. It's
okay.
There's a lot of different. The thing is that there's a lot of different factors at play that make it hard to know 100%. One is he is very edgy and engages in a lot of edgy humor. I'm very edgy, and I engage in a lot of edgy humor. You could absolutely quote mine the fuck out of me in saying edgy things. So, but you gave two conditions. One is the actual conspiracy stuff, and the second is the jokes. I could satisfy the second part, the jokes. The first part, when you say like, well, is he anti-Semitic in terms of he believes in actual conspiracy theories? At this point, I have to try to tease apart very carefully, like, what are the actual anti-Semitic conspiracies versus what are like the kind of like populist, like Jews and the elite are controlling society. Because the issue you run into is depending on how broadly you're going to paint the quote unquote anti-Semitic brush. Now on the far left, and we actually saw this happen in the UK with Corbyn. And we've seen it happen with the Squad on the left and some of the anti-Israeli, the BDS or whatever sentiment and shit in the United States. We've seen it happen here too, where people are quick to say, well, these things make you sound anti-Semitic. You know, if you oppose Israel, if you're trying to blockade their shit, if you're trying to trade, blah, 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 or yeah. So it's just, that's a really, really, really challenging question to answer. Yeah, go. Boom.
To what you said there, so you said, for example, okay, what do we mean? Is it just like Jews control the world, or is it like Jews and global elite control the world? I would say that both of those probably qualify as anti-Semitic statements. Would you disagree?
They probably would, I would imagine. Okay. If you think Jews control the world, yeah. Or at the very, well, assuming it's not true, right? Yeah, of course, that's an anti-Semitic statement generally, yeah. But it's just, the problem is that like, for us to wade into these waters, we're going to have to start to do a ton of analysis, a ton of like sophisticated irony and meta-irony analysis. We're going to have to make sure that our sources are relevant enough that they're recent, because I don't know about stuff 4 or 5 years ago. No offense to Nick, or take offense. I don't care about shit he said when he was 19 or 20. He's 24 now. His beliefs might have changed quite a bit. And the political climate pre and post Charlottesville has changed. It's just so much work. I just don't care that much. If there are people that really want to put together, and I noticed you did this and other people, if you want to put together things and say, by the way, guys, this is shit that Fuentes has said in the past, I think that's fine. That's totally okay. But I want to fight on solid ground, and I want to fight with the things that he says. I don't want to try to like, I think you're an anti-Semite, and now I'm going to argue to convince you why I think you're an anti-Semite, and then maybe, like, I'd rather just fight over the statements themselves. That's where I feel. It's so much easier. Yeah, go.
So maybe, yeah, maybe we're arguing a bit about like a bit of a red herring. So let's say that a divine entity, okay, came down and they touched you on the forehead, and now you had for sure knowledge about whether or not Nick Fuentes held bigoted beliefs against Jewish people. And let's say that revealed to you that yes, he is by your definition of the world for sure anti-Semitic. How would you proceed forward with this information? Would you change anything?
I don't think I would, actually. I think I would stay the course.
Okay, so then the argument about whether or not he is I guess irrelevant to you completely.
Yeah, because the issue is how difficult it would be to prove it. Because that, it's just, I just don't care about that. Let me be more specific. When I say that I don't care about that argument, what I mean is it's not an effective area for me to argue in whether he is or isn't anti-Semitic, because at the end of the day, whatever I end up establishing there is probably not going to be effective towards any side. Like, for my audience, most of them probably think he's anti-Semitic. So let's say I do establish that he is anti-Semitic. That doesn't help anybody on my end. If I fail to establish that he's anti-Semitic, it makes me look bad. People in my audience might be like, oof, Destiny's kind of like making shit up about people. And then for his audience, let's say that I fight really hard and I establish he is anti-Semitic. I find it hard to believe that an America First guy would be like, damn, Nick's actually anti-Semitic? I gotta leave. And then if I fail to establish that he's anti-Semitic, well, now it's like a huge laugh. Like, Destiny just wasted this whole debate and he couldn't even establish like the obvious fact that we hate Jews. Yeah.
Now we're looping back to the thing about impact, right? Because ideally, if you're able to make a solid mechanical argument, here's where the importance of being like, hey, this argument that Nick Fuentes is making, like you're in a debate with Nick Fuentes and he says some weird shit about Jewish people or whatever. This argument that you're making, you attack it first on the mechanical grounds. But here's where it's also important to be like, and the results of this type of rhetoric and this type of argumentation is going to lead to broadly negative and antagonistic sentiments being directed against minority groups, which is where it doesn't end up really well, right?
True, but remember, the impact statement rests on the effectiveness of the mechanical statement. An impact statement after a bad mechanical statement, it looks like you're falling flat. It looks like I don't want to use sowing out, but like you're like crying at that point, like, guys, he's evil. If I could share that revelation, let's say
you're good, but the thing is, you're really good at mechanical statements, right? And that's the thing.
I'm good at mechanical statements when I'm right. I'm good at mechanical statements because I am rhetorically effective, but it's because I put in a lot of work. I'll research shit until I can argue, right? Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, the mechanical statements come from knowing the true things, not just because I know people will say this, it's because he's a good debater. I am a good debater. But if he's truly not anti-Semitic and I try to say that he is, that's a really complicated world to enter. In that earlier example, you said if a God told me that he's anti-Semitic, if he gave me that answer in a box and I could share that with people, then I would go full steam ahead. Then I'd say, look, he is anti-Semitic. Fucking the guy gave me, look in the box, he is. Then I'd be like, okay, yeah, the God.
Pulp Fiction,
the Pulp Fiction box, yeah. Then I'd say, yeah, boom, he is. Then I would go full steam ahead. But even there are some things that I even know that are true that I won't argue because it's so difficult to wade through those arguments. Sorry, you were going to say something else. I'm cutting off. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's take it in a different direction then instead. So number one, I think you're really good at mechanical. So you've already done the difficult part, right? The difficult part is being good at the mechanical part, and that's why you see the issue. And I understand why you've been turned off from the impact because a lot of lefty people, they will be like, this is anti-Semitic, this is transphobic, this is racist, and they'd use that in place of an argument. And that's obviously a lot easier to you, but you have the mechanization down, which is why I feel like this impact part is really the easiest part, if you can swallow some of the things you have about being soy, right? But the second thing I was going to say now is that, okay, let's move past Nick Fuentes being anti-Semitic, because you seem to have already said that you can't bother proving that point, because it's complex, it requires multiple dimensions. So do you believe Nick Fuentes makes anti-Semitic arguments?
I think based on what I've heard, at least one comment, I asked him, I was like, where are you at right now with the anti-Semitism shit? And I think he's like, I think he said, before we would have said Jews are 70% of the problems, but now they're like, I think he said 30 to 50%. That sounds a little bit anti-Semitic. And my guess is going to be that if I would have I'm trying to think, did he say that Israel was behind 9/11 or was it Bush? I don't remember, but if he would have said Israel was behind 9/11, I'd say that's a little bit anti-Semitic. And then I'm guessing that if we would have a debate on the Holocaust,
I think it's pretty anti-Semitic, right?
Yeah, he would probably be he would probably be like really like Holocaust revisionist, if not outright denialist, which I would say is probably anti-Semitic. That'd be my guess. Yeah.
Okay.
There is a world where I could have a debate and probably prove that like Fuentes is anti-Semitic. I just don't see the point of doing it. But there's probably a world where I could do that. I would pick out like that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving past. Okay, fuck saying that Nick Fuentes is anti-Semitic, because you seem to have already made up your mind about that. So let's say you're having an argument with Nick Fuentes. So instead of the impact being like, oh, Nick Fuentes, like people like you are anti-Semitic, you're contributing to this. How about making the impact focus on the rhetoric instead? Like this argument that you're making, this is an anti-Semitic argument, this is a little whatever like that. How does that sound to you?
That's really bad because the way that these guys view themselves is they think that their moral statements are coming downstream from their factual analysis. So if I'm trying to fight them on the moral ground, but the factual analysis is correct, it makes it look like I'm just making an appeal to emotion because I know that I've lost the factual ground. So for instance, if somebody's legitimately saying black people have 75 IQ because they're black and that's how their brains are, and at the end I'm like, okay, but like, come on, like, shouldn't they be allowed to participate in a society like white people are? They're going to view themselves as like arbiters of fact and being like, no, Destiny, they can't participate in the same way because they're not the same. And then it's going to make the moral argument.
But in that case, they're gone no matter what.
No, but I don't think so. That's where I disagree. I think that if I can instill enough doubt in that, like, if I can instill enough doubt in that mind of the person who's like, okay, well, fuck, maybe the Minnesota transracial adoption study isn't like the best thing to look at when it comes to comparing differences in IQ. Maybe the fact that all these IQ researchers seem to have like, that's why I try to like seed the plant or sow the plants of doubt, sow the seeds of doubt. Because if I can get them on that part, then the moral part I think will change a little bit. But if that moral statement is coming from the description, this is why it's so hard to say, even when we talk about the anti-Semitic thing, like here, like you asked me this question, you say, if somebody believes that Jews run the world, is that anti-Semitic? That's actually a hard statement to answer, because let's say it came out that Jews did run the world. If you found that out,
let's say they run it like, and you're like really happy with how the world runs. Is that where we're going, or?
Well, no. Let's just say that. Well, let's say that you're unhappy about how parts of the world are, because that's what most people are. Like, let's say that you personally, you Rosewrist, let's say that you find out that Jews run the world. It's actually descriptively true. If you believe that, then are you anti-Semitic?
No, it depends on what you do with that information, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the issue. Is that like, so if somebody says like, do you think that black people shouldn't be allowed to go to the same schools as white people, but they believe descriptively that black people are so intellectually different that they ought not to, does it make you racist to think that they should be in separate schools? Some racist people can hold that belief, but if that belief is actually backed by science, is it racist? I don't know. And that's why I don't like attacking the morality of the statement, because if the descriptions before are true, the statement itself isn't necessarily bad. That's why I usually fight on the descriptive grounds. Yeah.
I see what you mean there. But so I think another, like, it's like the race realist example, right? How I often like to say that, race realists are wrong on the descriptive ground, but even if they were correct, their prescription still wouldn't follow, because I would still make the arguments that we should still do. Because I would still make the arguments that we should still do everything that we can to optimize individuals' potential within a society, and every person has the capacity to contribute. I mean, except for like a small subset.
Yeah, but the Charles Murray argument. This is the Charles Murray argument, because I believe that Charles Murray would agree with that, or at least that's what he says. Charles Murray would say, I don't hate black people. In fact, I love them more than you do, because I'm willing to recognize their biological limitations. We need to construct a society where black people can work menial jobs and be able to make a good income, a good living. And you liberals, you progressives that refuse to acknowledge reality, you're the ones forcing them into schools with affirmative action, watching them fail out at 2x the rate and accumulate a whole bunch of debt that they can't pay back, and pretending that you're doing a good thing. So actually, you're racist than me. That would be like the Charles Murray argument. That's why I think the descriptive part is so important. The same prescriptions will not follow from different descriptions. I think the prescriptions will actually look quite different.
Okay, precisely. So then to recenter on what got us into these examples, which was that, okay, the impact statement of saying that this argument leads to whatever morally bad argument, okay, the impact bit. So wouldn't this be an instance where making that impact argument, they kind of just don't care?
Well, it would be one that, if anything, it could reinforce their beliefs. Because if at the end I say, like, we need to do things for black people in society that shows that we care. Well, if you're like a race realist and you believe in the bell curve, you're like, yeah, Destiny, that's why you're extra wrong. I do care. You don't care. You just want to create this progressive utopia where diversity and differences and all that shit is irrelevant, but we're actually willing to recognize the science. So your impact statement is true, but like, I care about this because I do care about black. I actually don't hate black people. I think they should have their own country.
Yeah. But in that situation, if somebody has that initial reaction to it where they were like, yeah, Destiny, that means you probably didn't do good enough on the mechanical grounds.
True.
But I can see. So I guess you're so.
Or I thought we were having this argument. We were saying, let's say we skip the mechanical grounds. I thought that's how this started with the Nazi thing, but maybe not. But I do agree with you that like my impact statement can rest on mechanical.
Is that if you don't, you have like something against making an impact statement about Nick personally, like Nick is an anti-Semitic person, whatever. At that point, we still have on the table making impact statements about the effects of arguments and the effects of rhetoric, right? So never forego mechanization ever. So my argument was essentially that maybe would you think it was a good idea if you're having a debate with Nick Fuentes or somebody else, and somebody makes like an anti-Semitic argument is made, and you think it's an anti-Semitic argument because once again you said that it's very difficult to tell whether or not a person is anti-Semitic, but you'd agree it's a whole lot easier to tell whether an argument is, right?
Generally, yeah.
So in that case where you're arguing against somebody who's making an anti-Semitic argument, and you do your mechanization, which you do really well, would you then think that perhaps it's appropriate to add like an impact statement here that focuses on the anti-Semitic impact of this type of rhetoric and these beliefs?
Maybe, yeah. I just have to see the specific debate. I could conceive of debates where it would be good to do that, and I can conceive of debates where it would be bad to do that. But yeah, there probably is room there depending on the conversation you're having, depending on the exact conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that being a bit more mindful of impact is going to be good for you on two main things. Number one, I personally think that once again, contingent on good mechanization, which you are good at, and even in the worst case, it's not going to have too much of an impact. That talking about that, I use impact in like the general sense, that not the specific one we're talking about here. Using impact, now the theory word, along with mechanization is going to make your rhetoric and your argumentation hit a lot harder for a lot of people, and can add that extra pressure towards getting people to reconsider their beliefs in situations where you've done the mechanization well. I will also say that doing that might get some of the people off your back who keep saying that, oh, well, you're not doing enough, you're not giving you're not pushing back enough, you're not calling it for what it is, because you seem to be more focused on whether or not he's correct or not, instead of talking about the weight behind those statements, in the sense that people might think that you give off the impression that somebody who's arguing about rent control and is incorrect is maybe as like wrong as somebody who's arguing for Jewish question in terms of like the moral weight or whatever, and that kind of implication, or that impression, I should say, not implication, can leave people with a bad taste in their mouth, so to say.
I think that the impact then would probably matter on the type of thing that I'm talking about. I think there are ways that I could phrase it. I've never tried this before, but I could probably try this in a way. So like one possible thing could be like appealing to the like, if you're wrong about what you're saying, not saying it, but like if you're wrong, it would be pretty catastrophic to be like persecuting a whole group of people, or like having these things. Like that'd be pretty shitty, right? Like it, like and then I could probably tie it into other ends too. Like if women are wrong with how they analyze incels and the way they treat them, is pretty shitty too, right? And we could say, yeah, there are probably ways I could do that. It would be very tailored to that argument, like a mechanistic argument. I would be, but yeah, sure, yeah, it probably could be, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Okay. The other thing then is, so there was this Reddit post. Okay. Destiny's incorrect. Nick Fuentes does outwardly meet his definition for Nazi. Why did you ban this person?
Last two paragraphs were incredibly soy, and other comments that he made were actually so unimaginably retarded that if I could figure out this dude's address, I would probably contact the local courts to try to get this guy some sort of like permanent supervision so that he's able to be taken care of, because I think that if he wanders out into the world, he'll walk into the highway and get ran over by a car. That's how fucking stupid this guy was.
Let's read the last two sentences. So the fact of Nick Fuentes is a Nazi being the significantly contentious here is a pretty clear warning post that this community has already changed, and not for the better. Nazis aren't an enemy anymore. It's people who are so woke that's a real problem here, apparently. So I assume that the issue.
Wait, can you link me in the post so that I can look just real quick?
Yeah, for sure. Nope.
Also, I don't think I deleted the post. I think I just banned the dude. But
I didn't say you deleted. You just banned him. Oh. And then the final sentence was, this community used to give a shit about society progressing into a safer, brighter, and more inclusive future. So
oh, that was the part. Oh, okay, now I remember. Okay, gotcha. Because I thought you were just for the end. I was like, oh, that didn't sound that bad.
No, that was the second to last one I read. Yeah. The final one. Now look at it. Okay. So
what I mean by this is that DJJ used to positively organize and champion awesome causes, and now we're fighting tooth and nail over something that, in my views, is a well-documented fact, even by the definition that Destiny gave on stream, but evidently before, but he was blah, blah, blah. It wasn't meant to mean that we're being brainwashed. More than I think it's sad looking at where this community is now versus where it was. What a fucking soy, stupid fucking statement. The idea that like, oh my God, because we disagree on like this categorization, now we no longer organize or champion awesome causes or anything, that's stupid as fuck. Like, in this statement, like, this community used to give a shit about society progressing into a safer, brighter, more inclusive future. So much so that it went and campaigned for politicians who were striving to do the same. Now look at it. Bro, the campaigning shit failed because I got fucking murdered by other lefties for it.
Because you want a guy in the primary who's different than the fucking person who I want.
Yeah, but notice how I'm not obsessively shitting.
And your fans. It's me against you and your fans. It's me against you and your fans.
My fans aren't involved in this, and it's not even me against you.
They are involved in it. You fucking pay for their hotels. I've said that already.
My fans aren't going out to attack anybody. All we're doing is knocking on doors and making people aware of a certain candidate. That's all I want to do. I want people in my city to know that Mark is running for mayor. That's it.
You're so disingenuous. It's like, it's insane.
Okay, well, it's been a fun conversation. I would say...
Pull your dick out. Pull your dick out and say you're Hassan's baby boy.
First of all, how do you even know that I have a penis? It's kind of a weird assumption.
Pull your dick out.
Right? Number one, so that's already kind of, it's already like a little bit weird. Okay.
Baby boy.
Number two, right? I
Pull your dick out.
I don't know why you wouldn't just have a more positive impact in your local political scene.
And say you're Hassan's baby boy.
Rather than just contributing to like relentless negativity online. It seems really sad. And I'm like a little bit personally bothered by it because I see it happening like on a local level in my city where I kind of didn't think that stuff was necessarily this bad. I guess it's something that I'm just a little bit disappointed in. But
you're a little disappointed. Okay. Well, you're taking your toxic ass fans and you're bringing them to my city.
My city, by the way. You don't have any more claims.
My city, by the way. My city, by the way. I want your fans to know this is my
any more claim. Listen,
my
going to be gone in 2 years.
And you don't have any more. You don't have any more claim to this city than I do.
2 things, okay? One, two things, okay? Number one, you're probably going to be gone when you graduate. And number two, that Mark guy, number two.
Shut the fuck up.
The Mark guy that you brought in, you realize he's already accepted a job on the East Coast and he's going to be gone in a few months, right? He posted about this publicly. I don't know if you knew any of that.
What
the Mark guy that you brought in an argument, that guy's gone in a few months. He's already accepted another job. He's about to move.
Okay, and I'm here, bitch.
Yeah, and for how long? You graduated and you're going to leave? Because I've got a son that's going to live in Omaha for the next 9 years at least. So I have way more commitment to the city than you do. So I don't know why.
I'm staying here, bitch, and I'm in the city. And this is my city. And you're wherever the you are, LA, East Coast, whatever. You aren't here, and you don't give a shit about us.
Okay. Well, listen, I hope that the relentless negativity continues to play well for you when you're ultra depressed, when you cry at the middle of the night, when you realize that you're a sad, pathetic person. All you can do is contribute negativity online. I hope that at some point you take a step back and you reevaluate your priorities in life and you realize that, hey, maybe if I contribute a little bit more positivity to the world will be a better place. To try to like tie these things together, like, well, we used to go out and campaign for people and now we just love Nazis. That shit. What a dumb statement. And then his statement about notes was so stupid. I didn't actually ban him for this post. I thought about it when I woke up, but I was like, it's a high effort post. I'm going to look bad if I ban it. But then he made another comment down the thread that was so stupid, I had to ban him for his own safety and for my safety.
What comments?
Let me see if I can find this. 1 second.
Wait, so was he banned? He was banned after this. Wait, so okay, before you read that comment, were you like, I'm gonna ban this guy no matter what, or was it that comment that made you believe?
I was close to it because of how dumb the ending statements were. But I think the thing I actually banned him over was the when I saw how absolutely fucking stupid. Hold on,
someone linked it here.
Yeah, 1 second. It is.
It's taking forever to load. Oh my god.
This. The fact that Destiny said that he was uninterested in reading people's quote lists while literally typing Mr. Girl's quotes into a document for his references made me want to Roblox myself. What an unimaginably fucking stupid fucking comment.
From my understanding, the reason you were typing Mr. Girl's quotes was like it was in a conversation, right?
Yeah, I'm typing the conversation to keep track of the argument, not so that I can make a quote hit list.
Okay. So is the policy, do you ban people for being soy?
Usually I ban people when their attacks are like so fucking stupid and so like off the wall, like usually be like people accusing me of like grifting or people doing things like that like I don't see the contribution as being meaningful or positive, and I think it has a really toxic effect of the community when those types of comments are made and then people start to like rally behind it and it's too influential. I just want to like excise over my community. Like somebody that's making comments that are that stupid, I'd rather them step out of the way and let somebody more like intelligent or more diplomatic make the statements instead, because like these types of things just like they take the reins and they just drive everybody like up Mount Retard, and I don't want that.
But if it's in a situation where like you have 2.8k people upvoting it, wouldn't you say that it might be a good idea to maybe mechanistically address this rather than going straight for the impact of the ban hammer?
A little bit. I thought about it this morning. The mechanism was the stream today. It's called The Great Purge 2. You probably didn't watch my stream this morning, but I kind of talked about it that like anytime I'm going to do like a big purge, I will talk about it. And I talked about it this morning. It's like, if you're somebody that is very emotionally tied into like the word Nazi and you feel like it's a really important thing, whether we call people Nazis or not, I really just don't want you commenting in my community. And if you want to leave for another community, that's fine. If I bleed viewers off to Max, I'm actually okay with that. He hasn't backstabbed me or anything. I think he's a really cool dude. And if he is more successful because I cut like some of my fan base off and they go to him, I consider that to be a cool thing. That's good for him. So I'm not like salty about like him gaining viewers because I like Max. It's really cool. And if people leave me over this, I'm not like, I don't personally hate people that disagree with me on the Nazi shit. I'm not like, fuck you guys, you're lying. It's just like, I just don't want them in my community. It's just not something that I care to obsess over that thing. And it's detrimental to what I'm trying to push for. And I think that like the response of my subreddit over the past 2 to 3 days has just like further reinforced how I feel about all of this. That like people calling somebody a Nazi or not really doesn't have anything to do with what is a Nazi. It's just the intense emotional attachment they have to that word, which is something that I'm super not interested in. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna and I partly agree with this. I'm not just gonna say like I'm steel manning, so it's like some abstract thing. I'm gonna throw my weight around this a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a value in calling a belief for what it is. So I think that in a situation where somebody's making like highly, like anti-Semitic and statements and argumentation and rhetoric that fits within, categories and calling things of like Nazi or anti-Semitic or, fascist or whatever we want to talk about. I think that there is value in like kind of socially signaling that, hey, don't lose track of it. This is not just another incorrect, but this is not just like, oh, somebody's making a stupid argument. This is just like when, lefties talked about rent control being a good idea, but to signal that, okay, so this is a bad argument. This is a stupid argument, but also this is like a core tenet of one of the most destructive ideologies in human history, right? I think that social signaling is really important, and it's a good way to distinguish between arguments that are just faulty and essentially differentiating between their impact, right?
Sure. So there's two parts to this. So one you said was there's a value in calling a belief for what it is, and the second is there's a value in socially signaling. The first one I 1,000,000,000% agree with, and it's why I specifically avoid the term Nazi. So like, if I were to ask 10 people for a definition of Nazi, I'd get 11 different definitions, right? Do you agree with that?
I'm not sure if this might be an online politics thing. How that might be a greater.
If you want, we can start calling people down my Discord list right now. If you want to drag one at a time, we can get Stardust, we can get Dylan. I can start dragging people, and I can ask, how do you think of Nazis?
I don't think those people make a case. I think those people would actually be contrary to your case because those people are more inclined than most people.
Even though they're more inclined, I bet they would still. This was a joke that I did when I went on Prime Kai panels and Dylan panels. I would ask lefties, what do you guys think a fascist is? And nobody on the panel actually knew, even though everybody was using the word. Nobody could actually define fascist. I'm really curious. Wait, how is Bush a fascist?
I'm still waiting to hear a policy that I've written off because it was fascist coded that I didn't think of.
I want to hear how Bush. Wait, Peace.
I want to hear an answer to the first accusation you
I don't know
against me. Are you giving up on that one?
Bush was like a free trade neocon. That was like imperialism.
He had extrajudicial kidnappings. Bush literally had
Obama
like extrajudicial kidnappings.
Everybody, the extrajudicial kidnappings does not make you a fucking fascist. Yeah, that's
the drone strikes under Obama
on that policy. You made a very specific accusation.
I don't think he's a fascist.
Thank you. That's what I'm asking. Why is Bush a fascist?
No, I just explained earlier. Sorry, I gotta put my volume down. My roommate complained. I said earlier, I used to think Bush was a fascist when I was younger because he was setting up very dangerous authoritarian things like kidnapping people abroad and sending them to Guantanamo Bay with no judicial remedy. That's where that stuff came from. That doesn't mean he's a fascist because of the war I've learned about fascism. It requires like a charismatic leader to have like a cult like following. Like people voted for Bush, but they didn't like think like he like had pretty consistent policies, right? Trump has been all over the place, and like his followers would just believe whatever he says, and that's the dynamic that's really dangerous. Like people voted for
We're not
Bush
talking about Trump, we're talking about Bush. Why is Bush a fascist?
We have two parties.
If you're wondering where that came from, oh yeah, it came from the kidnapping people in Guantanamo.
I just want to say that anybody that would ever consider a fucking neocon a fascist is like, Jesus Christ. Like, what the fuck do these words even mean to you guys? Holy fuck.
Oh, we're happy to talk about it. I know. Did you just come in here to complain about my presence on the panel? Are you that desperate for my attention?
No.
It's literally.
Are we debating semantics
You're
now?
not the person I'm referring to.
Is that everything that we're doing? Is just debating semantics, though?
It's you guys are the ones who want to use fascism. So yeah, I think, and if we go into the general population, it's going to be even worse. Like, what is a Nazi? Okay. Oh, I don't know, like Hitler, like Germany. Are there still Nazis? Like a lot of people even see something like that.
Okay, maybe this might be a bit of an American thing. I know at least in Europe, we get actually like pretty, at least from my education, we got actually pretty in-depth thing into like, okay, these are the core tenets of Nazi ideology. We talked about authoritarianism.
Yeah, but you got to be. You got to be.
We talked about the kind of cult of personality that existed. We talked about that. Yeah.
You got to be really careful about that because if you're, I don't know what it's like in Europe, but if you're actually historically studying like what is Nazism, Nick is absolutely not a Nazi. He's actually not even close at that point because you're missing. Nazis are never going to be okay with like fucking Polish people or Eastern Europeans, right? You're either Aryan or you're not. That's one huge point. And then things like Catholicism, fucking forget it, right? If you don't have like state subjugation of religion, there's no fucking way that like Nazis are going to be okay with that. So if you're going from a historical perspective, Nick is absolutely not even.
Was Nazi ideology like pagan, or am I?
I believe that it was an important part of it. That there was a guy that made a bigger Reddit post on that, but like the state religion, or the religion had to be like subjugated by the state. It was a more complicated affair, but they're not going to be okay with like the Catholic Church and shit. Like there's no way that like that intertwinement of like Catholicism or Christianity with the state is going to be like okay. So like from a historical sense, you're now Nick is completely escaping from Nazism, especially with like the Aryan race stuff, right? Like Nick is very. In terms of Nick's like white people thing, he's a very diverse kind of guy. Like there's room for him and a whole bunch of white Hispanic people and everything.
Nick Fuentes, yeah.
Yeah. So
okay,
yeah.
What you mean there. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. In terms of that, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, I recognize the critique you made, and I think it's a good point. So then I'm gonna turn the question on you then.
Yeah, go for it.
How would you distinguish between really like hardline, hyper authoritarian, kind of like super like bigoted, like in-group, out-group, alienation and ostracization of certain like and dehumanization of certain like people groups from just like regular conservative rhetoric and argumentation?
I don't think I would that much. I think again, like I agree with your first statement in that there is a value in calling a belief for what it is, and I would just fight on the beliefs. Like I don't like race realism. I don't like 9/11 conspiracy shit. Like these are the things I'm going to fight because I think there's a value in fighting against that belief. But the problem is that when this is wait, or go ahead.
To test this.
Yeah,
to test this. So let's say you're having like let's say on the presidential, let's say you had Trump and Biden. Would you not feel differently, or would you not feel like it should be handled differently if the two of them were debating the Jewish question or the two of them were debating rent control?
What do you mean should it be handled differently? Like should they have different impact statements or?
No. Do you feel like, do you feel like both of those debates and those conversations should just be, kind of like handled with the same degree of gravitas, so to say? Like, could you picture in America where you just have
I mean, the answer intuitively is obviously no. I'm just trying to think of what that would look like. Like, say it's more extreme. Let's say they're arguing over like what the White House should be painted versus they're arguing over whether or not we should drop nukes on North Korea. It seems to be the case that they would be. I just don't know what it would how differently it would work or what it would look like. Yeah, go ahead.
This is where I talk about the social signaling, right? Because in this instance, like if you just have like a debate about why White House can be colored, like. You know, if you have some people think that should be white and some people think it should be, I don't know, fucking beige. You know, there's a degree of like acceptance of both those beliefs. Okay, that it's kind of fine. I mean, one of them, let's say painting it white gave like a +5 intellect stat boost to the entire country or whatever. So there's still a correct answer, but at the same time, like it's not a huge deal compared to like a situation where like you have parts of the country or people that are like, we should just fucking nuke everyone who's like our geopolitical enemy. There is a much greater weight in that situation, right?
Yeah, I would say so. But I would say that in these cases, like, you can still do everything that a label would by focusing on the belief. Like, if somebody's talking about, like, white supremacy, like, I'm going to fight them really hard on white supremacy. But I don't need to ever bring in, like, outside terms with so much external content into them to be able to fight on that belief. Because I feel like as soon as I do that, it gives my opponent the room to wiggle. Like if I start attacking Nick really hard on like, bro, like white majority, how you even measure that? This shit is cringe as fuck. Like how would you even begin to figure out who's white, who's not? How would it not extend to other things like brown eyes, blue eyes? As soon as I'm like, you're kind of like a Nazi, I've given him oh God, he's like, thank God he's coming out. Okay, I'm not a Nazi because I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want any camps. And that might be true. And now I'm like, like I brought in this external word with all this external content that I've lost control of now. And now what I could do is I go like, well, hold on, wait. I'm just defining Nazi insofar as it means now we're fighting over the definitions of the words, different people in different, like I've muddied the waters.
I recognize this critique that you made before when we talked about the Nazi, and that's when I returned the question to you. But so what was I gonna say? Before you mentioned the thing about Nazi, just now what we were talking about. Okay, wait. No, I'm having a brain freeze.
What were we talking about right before Nazi? I'm on YouTube, so we can just go right back. If I was arguing with Nick over something related to white supremacy, and he's saying things about like, well, I might be able to push him on like all these different parts related to white supremacy, and then and then I say, well, you're a Nazi.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, now I remember.
Okay.
So I agree with what you say, and I agree that there are really big issues with labeling, and that it can give people like wiggle room, and it can lead to people using it just as an impact and then foregoing like the mechanistic thing. It can be used to the point where it's so broad it becomes meaningless. There are all these issues with labels, and I 100% agree with all you're saying. However, do you think that there's no value to labels in a political settings? Because I would make the argument that due to the way like human psychology works and the way that we categorize things and we recognize patterns in society, I think that there's some level of like increased like accessibility and ease in comprehension and categorization of political beliefs that occurs when you use labels to some degree. And I agree with you in all the critiques that you made of labels thus far, but to throw them out as like a tool for human comprehension entirely feels a bit drastic.
I think that's on you to demonstrate, unfortunately, right? Like if I say to somebody, I really need a car, and then I were to poll people, if I were to poll 20 people on what is a car, if I pulled 20 people on what a car is, I'd probably get like 3 to 5 different types of answers. But for the most part, it'd be like some vehicle with 4 wheels that has an engine, maybe combustion, whatever. And every single definition that I would get there would be fine. It actually wouldn't matter. Like there might be subtle disagreements on like what is a car between people, but for the most part, what I need is going to be encompassed by every single definition. So in that sense, like the ontology of a car fits the conversation. That's cool. Okay. And it can be that way for a lot of different things where I am calling forth something. I need a shirt. Oh, okay. Some garment that goes right. Yeah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there are going to be some parts where there's such a divergence of what that word means that when I call it forth, I'm causing more dissonance than consonance. That if my killer thing at the end is like, that's why he's a Nazi. As soon as I've said that, I've rung the lights on like 50 million different definitions, and I've lost control of what I'm trying to say because everybody's bringing in their own external baggage. So I agree with your premise that certain categories are important. You can't just throw them all out. It would be foolish of me to say that. But for these types of political labels, I think the categories have largely come to encompass so many different meanings that I can't use them for conciseness anymore. Because some of those meanings I'm going to want, and some of them I'm not going to want, and I can't control what the audience believes at that point about them. Yeah.
So would you be in favor of just moving away from using all political labels, like social democracy, social liberal?
I kind of have, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. Because like usually, and I think I even said this like 2 or 3 years ago. I think I even realized this. Where like when I go onto a panel, somebody will be like, "What's your political belief?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm a sock dem." But when I say sock dem, I mean actual social democrat who's in favor of capitalism. I'm not a dem sock trying to move towards socialism, and I'm very progressive. But I still think like I've got to go into like all these different things. Like, fuck, why the fuck did I even say I'm a sock dem, right? And then some people, I think one guy even emailed me and he says, actually, I disagree. Sock dems actually historically tend to move towards socialism. It's like, oh fuck, well maybe I can't even use that label. But yeah, I tend to stay away from all political labels. I think I've said over and over again. I just want to fight about let's talk about the policy positions or the ethics positions exactly, rather than even trying to do the label stuff.
Okay. Okay, I can see the argument you're coming from. I would say that, and this would be something that I'm not sure if I could prove, but I most certainly would need to dedicate some degree of preparation to this specifically. I think that it's probably more helpful because I recognize the use of labels and being able to categorize and improve human comprehension, especially like on the fly, where you can get like a general grasp of like, okay, this is how these ideas probably gonna like align. This is how this person's beliefs probably gonna look at like in the roundabout ballpark. I still see I see utility in labels. However, I agree with all the critiques or labeling of it. But I'm not sure if the correct direction to move towards is fuck all labels. They're done. We don't need to use them at all. Or move towards we need to be super soy, we need to be super tippy, and we need to be super like anal about making sure people use them correctly in society.
So I would disagree with your first part of that statement, and we would agree on this. When fuck all labels, they're dumb and they don't work at all. I think labels can be incredibly important.
In political context, my bad.
Yeah, well, no, even in political context, they could be. If these words still retain their original meaning, I could actually use these to to hardcore reinforce an impact statement. Let's say that all of us agreed what made a Nazi a Nazi. Let's say that there was there were 2 definitions or 1 definition that we all agreed upon. I could do mechanistic arguments against Fuentes where I say like, listen, dude, you believe this and I think it's wrong, and you believe that and blah blah blah, and I think you believe that. Like I could run all of this down, and for my impact statement, I could say like, listen, I've got you on this, and that. Your views are basically that of a Nazi. And like historically speaking, we've seen what happens when Nazis come into power. I don't want death camps. I don't want like the whole world to go into war. Like I could actually use that label. I could call forth that label too, because if I put some pieces of the puzzle together, well, now I can bring in a label that gives me a whole narrative around all of the different individual things that they believe, and I can start to fill in.
You're saying exactly what I was saying, right?
Yeah, but I don't have that label anymore because it doesn't work, because everybody's destroyed, because everybody has so many different personal, private definitions for these words that I can't use that anymore, right? Go.
So that's what I'm asking you about. That's what I'm challenging you a little bit. So I think we both agree on a lot of the descriptive things we've laid out. You do agree with me that there is values in human understanding and comprehension that comes with labels. I agree with you on the fact that labels are being grossly misused and can actually be counterproductive and worse for understanding. And now here's where we talk to, okay, so how do we solve this? What's the prescription we derive from this? Is it that like all political labels, we should move away from them and ignore them? Or is it we should keep political labels, but we should make a great societal effort to make sure that we keep the definition narrow, specific, and that it's utilized in a good way?
Yeah, there's a personal one and there's a societal one, right? The societal prescription should be that like men need to stop raping women. But the personal prescription to a woman isn't go into society as though men aren't raping women. You need to be really careful and take care of yourself. And that's the unfortunate reality of where you're at. The societal prescription should be these words have specific meanings. Use them correctly. But personally, I can't wander into the world expecting everybody to act in that same way. I have to go into the world understanding that there's 92 million definitions of communist, Nazi, rapist, transphobe, and that's just the world that I live in, right?
Okay.
Unfortunately,
I see what you mean. Okay.
Like, and yeah, because it happens with all sorts. It'd be nice to be able to say like that guy's transphobic, but like if I call somebody transphobic, what does that mean to you? Like, there's nothing. Okay. There's not even anything there. Who the f knows? It could mean that they're like a really chill, really cool person that just agrees or disagrees with like trans women and cis women competing together, or it could literally be somebody that thinks that like trans people are faking it for attention. Both of those people are transphobic. Like the label has been blown open so much and has so many different definitions that it's kind of meaningless at that point. Or not meaningless. I keep saying that. Every time I've said that, I'm wrong, and I retract every time. When I say that labels are meaningless, I'm misspeaking. When I say meaningless, what I really mean is they have so many meanings that I can't apply one in a specific situation like that. That's what I really mean. There's too many meanings. Yeah.
I see your argument. I recognize the analogy there. I could alternatively bring in a separate one, which I know that you've made before, which is that, okay, so is this like a topic that's similar to, you know, rape in society, or is this a topic that might be similar to makeup in society, where sure, you know, you have this like big social issue, but a good way to resolving it is if people, particularly influential people, like do their hardest and kind of like take a sacrifice and making sure that they try their hardest to reify these words and these definitions and keeping them like strict within their communities, and hopefully that's going to like seep into society and broadly start influencing it more there. And your allegory to this with makeup would be that the way to make a society where people are more accepting of people, of women particularly, not wearing makeup is if it's influential you know, women celebrities or whatever, or influencers or whatever, start using it less and less, kind of, you know, martyring themselves, causing costs to them. In the case of the labels, their communication. But eventually, if enough people start doing it, then you're going to build towards an actual social force that's going to accomplish something. Yeah,
that could kind of be the analogy. But the problem is that I'm not just martyring myself. I would ask an entire political movement to martyr itself, kind of. Because for me to go forward into the world and try to use these labels would effectively mean that I'm missing out on so much of my ability to communicate. It's like if this was just like a personal thing for me, like, oh, you should wear different clothes or do something that might make you look better or worse or whatever, then that's like a personal thing. But like in this, I'm actually hampering my ability to do it.
It's their job as well, right? I think this was in regards to like a conversation you talked about, like Lily, who you should play Valorant with, and like Pokemon. You were like, hey, like these are like the type of influences that you just like send it and not wear makeup, and that would come with like a big cost to them, right?
Yeah, it could theoretically, but the cost to them isn't seen as like, I feel like it's different with politics because like the only cost to them is a little bit personal. It's not like by not wearing makeup, they're hurting all women or their political movement is like getting weaker, right? Like arguably that's strengthening their stuff. But if I try to force people to use a word in a certain way, it reminds me of there's an XKCD comic. Have you seen the one where it's like there's 8 different cables, there's 8 different standards, but we're going to make the one cable that makes it so there's like one universal standard, and then the next panel is like now there's 9 cables. That seems to be the thing that happens. Is that like if I were to say like, okay, well we're going to fight and make this definition, that's like, okay, cool. Well, you just added another definition to the pool. You don't have the ability to make everybody else, you know, see your shit, you know.
Sure, but I would say so. I agree with what you said, and the difference is that in the makeup example, it's one person hurting themselves versus in the political movement, there's a broader like weight behind you, political weight that's also being compromised because you're hurting your communication. But at the same time, the only way to move towards like a society which labels are used more concisely is for people with political weight to do it, right? Because if you have somebody with no political weight, then nobody's going to give a fuck what they have to say. So
that's true, but I can kind of.
It's like there's no way to do without that cost, right? So
yeah, but I can kind of do both at the same time. Like I try that, right? Like I do when I hear words used incorrectly, I'll call it out. I just can't go on the other side and use a word the way that I want to use it because it's still used incorrectly so much. But I do try to say when people say like I said that like Vosh is saying that Antonin Scalia and George Bush are fascists. Well, what do you mean by fascist, right? I'll call him out when he says it, but that doesn't mean that I have to start using that word. If the definitions did return, that would be great. But to be quite honest, I would have to look historically. I don't know if that's ever happened with language in the history of the world, or if language has always just gotten more muddier over time. Or actually, I shouldn't say muddy. That's not even really true. Language is evolving over time. Like fascist and racist and all these things still have pretty specific meanings, but the specific meanings are just varied from one context to the next, and they're not like what's written in the dictionary, right? Like transphobe means that like if somebody says somebody else is transphobic, what they're saying is I am like very pro-trans and I don't like the views they have on trans people. That's generally what transphobic means, truly.
Yep, I think what you said there about doing both at the same time is probably a good idea. So when you're operating within a society and you're communicating with external parties in a world where labels lack meaning, then I can understand why you want to forego them to improve communication. But at the same time, maybe you should work on like an internal. Hey, this is the DGG definition. I sound like XUC there. Holy shit, DGG definition of Nazi. And we're going to, as a community, try to stick to this and try to reinforce this as a definition. And then hopefully this is something that spreads and reifies itself in the future. Because I'm sure at least within the online world, you doing that could have some form of an impact. But
yeah, I mean, it can. But again, like there's so much that's outside of my control that like I push for like a very specific definition of say pedophile, for instance. But I bet like less than half of my community would actually like consistently use it that way outside of it. And they can't even do it because then they're being forced into like whatever societal bubbles and shit. Like I do try to push for people to be more specific with words. I just it's just hard because I'm fighting against so much externally that I don't want to undermine all of my own arguments having that meta battle.
Okay. I see what it is. All right. Those are the main things I've related to this. Do you have any other thoughts about this specifically?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. One thing. Am I gonna be like persona non grata? Am I gonna immediately lose the role I have to join into your thing after asking this? But like, what's going on with the? Aren't you? Come on, you promised the blue hair for the charity thing, right? Like, what's going on with that?
I'm working on it. I'm buying the supplies. Okay, I've got 3 of the 8 things.
You have blue lights. You got a blue shirt. Like, you got the blue little buddy.
Well, I thought if I turned the blue light up enough, it would be okay. But Jesus, what do you want? We're on day 4 of this line of argumentation.
Destiny.
Yeah, what's up? Oh shit! Did you have to delete your Twitter?
I have very bad news.
Oh shit! He's about to meme. What's up?
MrBeast ratioed me.
Yeah, we saw it. No. You got absolutely destroyed on that. Wait! Hold on. You can recover though. You know that, right?
How can I beat MrBeast?
You got to offer 15,000 for responding to your first tweet.
Bro, they deleted Hustlers University. I can't make any money anymore. It's impossible.
Oh well, then I guess you're fucked.
Start your own hustling. That's what hustling's about. Yeah, start your own Hustlers University. Make money. Startups. Let's go.
Where's your Hustle University, bro?
Here, I'll give you a hustle. Can you give me your OmniLiberal Twitter account and I can rebuild?
No, fuck you.
That's the OmniLiberal Twitter account.
Yeah, also, that's not my account, bro. That's my friend. I don't know what you're talking. You could message the OmniLiberal dude, but I have no guarantee he'll respond, so.
Please, help me out, man. Destiny, help a black man out. Don't you love black people?
Not that much.
Show your liberal racism, man. I'm beneath you. Bring me up to your level. I need you.
I'm not liberal anymore, dude. You missed the last argument. I'm a full-on Nazi now. I'm actually celebrating the deletion of your Twitter account. I hate black creators.
You are my white savior. Help.
Okay. Do you have anything else for us? I'm trying to do arguments here. Trying to do serious debate.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Jesus. All right. So the blue hair. Back to that.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Okay, it's in the works.
Okay. And then Valorant with Lily Peachy. That's the second one that I'm here to.
Okay.
To
Working
mention,
on that one too. Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Working on the perpetuity. Just like you're going to check out my docs, right, Destiny?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Sounds good. Well, I think that's it for me. If I have something else, I'll maybe drop in again. But yeah, have a nice stream.
Have fun. Be careful, babe.
Bye-bye.
The Rem. What's up?
Going on? How are you doing?
I'm doing fantabulous.
My DMs have been blowing up with Wittgenstein at the wazoo.
Gotcha.
What's going on?
With what?
Well, let's just cut to the chase.
Cut away.
What are you taking from Wittgenstein and applying?
I think the idea that like the definition of words is always kind of like this use case. That's like that's as far as we should ever go, basically, when looking at how a word is defined.
Ever?
Yes.
So you're completely equating meaning and use together?
Essentially, yeah, I think. Unless you're about to argue me out of it.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's a lot. Well, like the first thing I should say is this is more of like a meta-philosophical.
Okay, no, it's not. There's no such thing as meta-philosophy. There is philosophy.
You'll understand what I mean. No, you'll understand what I mean when I say that, in the sense of how we go about approaching philosophical works.
That's philosophy.
Okay, fine. It's a philosophical point.
Okay, I'm policing heavily the addition of meta arbitrarily to a lot of words here. Okay, go for it. Okay.
Okay. Don't you think it's strange? Well, okay. When I approach philosophy, or at least when I try to, I think it's good to always remain skeptical.
Of course.
And by that I mean, if we know that on a given dispute there are a lot of different positions, before we go about publicly proclaiming a certain position, maybe it's a good idea to do a little reading on the subject, figure out what are the other positions, where does this meaning as use position stand in the history of philosophy of language, and where does it stand now? Because, I mean, you know, Wittgenstein is almost 66, we're approaching, I think, 70 years since those theories came. And I'm not saying that he's not relevant. Of course he is. He's one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. But specifically when it comes to language and philosophy of language, his theories have been, certain aspects of his thought have been adopted and then transformed with new insights coming from logic and linguistics to have a very nuanced understanding of language. Because, I mean, I consider it probably the most complicated area of philosophy. So don't you think it's a little strange to get, you know, a couple of emails on Wittgenstein and then go around parading it like that is the correct theory of meaning?
So it's not just that I had emails on Wittgenstein and it like totally fucking changed my whole view of everything. It's that I've already had these views and I've already like roughly believed in almost all of these things, but somebody basically came by and said like, hey, let me help put this into words better for you. And the Wittgensteinian or Steinian way of like looking at it is like, oh shit, this is like a really good way, I think, of kind of like putting into words all like the issues that I'm having. Yeah, that was the thing.
No, and I don't like, and I think that's how most people go about philosophy. I mean, I am, and people will disagree, philosophers will disagree, so I'm not pretending that this is the only correct way. But for me, like, I try not to put a lot of stock in my own personal intuitions. Just because I have a hunch about the way something ought to be, if I know that there are reputable, authoritative people who have spent their entire lives studying something, who have come to radically different conclusions, I want to seek out their work first before I go about asserting something that completely contradicts their views.
Okay.
And in that sense, I think it's more, and you might not care because you don't really care about the about, but I guess it is a little annoying for those of us who study philosophy, because then we all get inundated with.
Well, then tell me something that, like, tell me a belief I have or something that's wrong that I should have changed or that it isn't accurate.
Well, I mean, meaning is use. I mean, what does that even mean to begin with? Because that's just a very, like, of course it is. Of course, meaning is tied to the way that we use words. That's tautologous. So when we say that meaning is use, and
wait, hold on, that's not a tautology. I think there are people that would disagree with that. Maybe not in the philosophy world, but in the...
No. Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that meaning is, as use is so broad that there needs, like, you would have to explain far, far more as to what that means. Because I don't think any philosopher you meet is going to disagree that meaning isn't inherently tied to the way in which we use words.
Well, sure, but then I would just agree with all those philosophers. What does it matter? Or what is the... Wait, so do I even have a bad belief, or are you just mad that, like...
No, I do think... Well, okay, so if I were to ask you, can you elaborate on what it means? For example, I wouldn't use even the word Nazi, because clearly that's a really controversial term. But like something like cup. How do you go about learning what the word cup means?
How do I go about learning it? Well, as a child, we see things that are called certain things, and then we start to associate those things with the things that we find in life. And then there's like some sort of like family resemblance of like what these things are, and then we kind of associate all these things with the word cup, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so...
If we're talking about the noun cup and not like other types of things, but yeah.
So reference plays a very crucial role in the language learning process. It clearly seems to play a very crucial role in the meaning of terms. So like on a traditional theory of meaning, there's sense and reference, the reference being what the word actually refers to, or the set of all things that a concept applies to. So for example, Nazi, the reference of Nazi would apply to all those things that fall under that concept, right? And then the sense of that would be the way in which one person comes to know the reference of a term. So though we might have different ways of understanding what it is to be a Nazi, some people would press against you and say, well, at the end of the day, the reference is the same regardless. I mean, I don't believe that, because I like.
Wait, hold on, real quick. Because if we want to move on to something different, we can. But it sounded like you came in here because you were irritated that I have this new way of it. So you don't actually disagree with any of the things I said.
I do disagree.
Okay, what do we disagree? Okay,
I'm providing.
We're building up to that. Okay, go for it. All right.
Yes. So when you say, for example, that the meaning of, because let me try to paraphrase at least sort of what I've got from you so far, and you tell me if you disagree or if it's a fair characterization.
Okay.
If I'm entering a conversation, we have sort of a set of presuppositions about what words mean. Sometimes those presuppositions don't line up, and you might have to have a dispute about which presupposition we should make before we begin the conversation. So in the case of Nazi, if two people have different presuppositions of what Nazi means, you'll have to have that dispute about what exactly that means before you move on. You seem to be saying, and in this I agree, that sometimes that like that definitional argument actually causes more harm, and it's better just to not have that discussion at all and to focus on other things.
Sure.
Okay. And I agree with that. But that's a pragmatic argument. That's not really based in philosophy of language. That's just a purely practical argument about...
Well, not all parts of that are pragmatic, no? Like the part where you say that like a word can mean a different thing. Like the prescription that you're drawing here is pragmatic, but like the analysis I don't think is just pragmatic.
Okay, so you said, do you believe that meaning as use applies to every single statement? In every single term?
I'm trying to think of weird grammatical escapes for that, but I would say
what about
probably...
like Aristotle?
What about it?
Like Aristotle generally like I think most people agree that that is not a context-sensitive term. And that Aristotle...
Hold on, it must be, unless I'm missing something very obvious.
No, most people tend to believe... I mean, there are people who want to argue everything is contextual, and maybe that's a really...
Well, let's say I make a popular video game, and the main character's name is Aristotle. And when I say Aristotle, that brings to mind two different... Yeah.
Right? But clearly that's not the same type of instance as we're talking about with Nazi, where there's, like you said, it's a family resemblance concept, right? That just happens to be the same sound is produced, but they're homophones. But those are two separate definitions, two separate meanings. That's not what's going on in the Nazi.
Well, how autistic can we be here? If I say to somebody, have you read Aristotle? And somebody says, well, no, I've never seen his body before. I'm like, well, hold on. When I say read Aristotle, what I mean is you've read books that are written by Aristotle. And then they're like, well, no, actually never. I don't know how to speak fucking Greek or whatever. I'm like, okay, I mean, have you read like a book that was written by him originally but was translated in public? It's like, oh yeah, I've read Aristotle. Like even at that, couldn't you argue that there's still a lot of like language stuff going on with that, or no?
Well,
is that not the same type of thing?
That's not with Aristotle.
Well, that's not what?
That's the context definition of verbs like read.
Well, sure, but it's still saying that like the word originally you asked me like just for Aristotle himself. Like it seems like even in that case, then there is, or it would seem to be the case that there could like what Aristotle even means could be the subject to a debate. No.
The actual like. So the linguistic token, like the spoken word or the written word, yes, there are homophones in the same way that when I say to you two and two and two, those all sound the same, but there are three different meanings which are assigned to three different expressions, right? And yes, context sensitivity, it's the same thing with terms like I or this or that, demonstratives, or indexicals. Like these are things that vary depending on context because of the very nature of those terms. But I'm just trying to press on you that not all words work that way. And I certainly don't think that proper names like Aristotle work that way. And I'm undecided on whether.
Yeah, hold on. Wait, yeah, I was gonna say this. Another stupid wrote it in chat, so it sounds like I'm stealing it from her, but I'm not. Let's say, arguably, couldn't Aristotle refer to the person or the work? Like kind of what I said in the beginning. Have you read Aristotle? Or I just say, let's just say somebody says Aristotle, and I hold a gun to your head and ask you, what is Aristotle? And you're like, well, it's a person. Wrong. It's the work. Like when you say if you read Wittgenstein, you mean the work of Wittgenstein, right? Or if you read Aristotle, the work of Aristotle. Couldn't that technically be two different things?
Yeah. Okay.
And that's even a proper noun, yes. So that's like as precise as.
But again, what we're talking about there is the actual like linguistic token. So it works the same way with 222, right? They all sound the same, but you press a bit further and you break down the vagueness. But that's not what we're talking about here. There's a difference between the vagueness of a term and its context sensitivity. Meaning as use really has to do with context sensitivity as opposed to vagueness. It's just the nature of language that a lot of our sounds sound the same, and so we'll have to clarify it with further statements so that we're narrowing it down a bit more. But that's not.
Could I not
argue
argue
over definition?
I don't know if I agree with you, but I don't know. I super disagree, but I either don't have the philosophy to fight with you, or you're just very wrong. But I don't know.
Well, let me give you the count. So this is, I don't believe in this, but let me give you the very diametrically opposed philosophical view on language that I think you would highly disagree with, which is probably the most popular position. I'm not happy about it, but this is the most popular
Wait, hold on.
position.
I don't care about the most popular position. Just if I'm saying something wrong or incorrect, do you think there's an understanding that I have that could be improved with some other position? Then tell me. Don't say, here's the most popular definition. You don't have to use it, and I don't even agree with it. I don't care about that.
No, I'm just trying to present you the groundwork, because then I'm going. Okay, let me just speak first.
Okay, go for it.
There's a view that the meaning of a term like a proper name is linked to causation and the original cause of it. It's called like the baptism. And so that the term Aristotle, from the moment of his birth, when people started calling him Aristotle, he wrote all his books, he became the teacher of Plato. That has then carried over centuries and centuries and centuries to have the meaning that it has now. And so there's this belief that you can't divorce meaning from what is external in the world. And so this idea that meaning is use makes meaning completely tied to human thought and societal agreement. And there's no external friction. And that's a really troubling issue for a lot of people.
Isn't that kind of true, though? Like, if every human died, wouldn't the meaning of Aristotle, like, disappear?
Do you know the twin Earth? Like, here, I'm going to give you a thought experiment, which is used to kind of refute the view that you have. It's called the twin Earth experiment.
Okay.
You can imagine that there are two Earths.
Yep.
Earth 1 and Earth 2. And this is prior to any sort of chemical knowledge about the world.
Sure.
And imagine that these two worlds are completely identical, except for the fact that water on World 1 has a different chemical composition than water on World 2. But besides from that, they are completely identical worlds. All the events in the world have happened identically, etc. Because, you know, when you don't notice any difference. The only time you will notice a difference between these two worlds is when you go down to the chemical level and see that water is not composed of H2O, but some other chemical compound, XYZ. This is Putnam's argument, and he uses it to conclude that, well, clearly in these worlds, water doesn't mean the same thing, because they can't, because we know that once we did the chemical investigation, we found that they have different chemical compositions. So meaning ain't just in the head. That's sort of the phrase, and that's that is the predominant view.
Okay, so I don't know if this would be like a Wittgensteinian like rejection of this, but I feel like the question is on its head meaningless. Like by the time you've asked the question, you've already disproven like the whatever you're trying to get at. To say that water could exist in a twin world where the water functions identically but has a different chemical composition, by the time you've established that much, the question has become absurd. That's what it feels like to me. Because
why?
Water being chemically different could never function the same way. Like by definition, like it couldn't. So it seems like the context of that second question.
Not true. That's not true.
It absolutely is true.
You don't think that there could be two substances that prior to scientific investigation appear to us completely the same, and only upon going down to the
sure, but we're not talking about like some really high on the periodic table, some esoteric element that only exists for fractions of a second. We're talking about a pretty fundamental like molecule that exists on the planet that is like used in a ton of different things. The idea that it could be completely different is and still functionally the same. By the time I'm just saying, by the time you've asked that question, you've begged so much that I think the question kind of becomes meaningless. I'm not investigating anything of interest.
Rem,
oh my God.
How does Rem? Hey, we've never spoken, but I just have a question. Most people would agree that Wittgenstein is in total agreement with semantic externalism. So I'm not exactly.
No, I'm not
sure.
arguing against Wittgenstein. I'm arguing against Destiny, whatever he's taken from Wittgenstein. Obviously, Wittgenstein doesn't. But
meaning is use, and semantic externalism or the twin worlds experiment are in total agreement. There's no issue there.
Again, it depends on, this is what I'm pressing Destiny on, because clearly he's rejecting the experiment. So clearly there's a disagreement with him and Wittgenstein. I'm trying to pull out his own.
Well, he's rejecting the experiment because you presented the experiment.
Why are you speaking on behalf of him?
You presented it as something that was at odds with what he was saying. So I think it's a little unfair.
I mean, his response to it is that it doesn't make sense.
Because he was trying to work out what you mean. To be fair, I don't fully understand what you mean in terms of using this to negate any sort of meaning is use or anything that Destiny said so far.
Destiny, do you not see the difference between a view where, what you seem to say, where it's completely dependent on human interaction and our own contextual understandings of it, and that there doesn't need to necessarily be any tie to the world, versus what I'm presenting, where there is a necessary tie to the external world and how we come to know the meaning of the
world? The reality of something and the meaning of something.
Listen, I don't know who you are, but I'm trying to.
Well, hold on, wait. Okay, wait. Well, let her hold on, because she can
talk to her, but
we'll just let her present that because she has a better grasp of the philosophical concepts than I do, and I feel like for me, like I'm getting lost on stuff that's not relevant to the broader philosophical question. Like I wonder if maybe H2O isn't like the best example, but maybe because just my understanding of chemistry means that if that molecular arrangement was done any other way, then necessarily from that a whole bunch of properties, like the world would be.
Chemist. Destiny,
okay, sure. Here, let me.
There is a reason it is one of the most famous philosophical thought.
There's a lot of famous philosophical thought experiments that are garbage, though, right?
Like, there's objection to it. I think you can agree is kind of off. Like that is not the point it's trying to get at. Like it's almost like don't object to the hypothetical. The hypothetical is just supposed to make a point.
Okay, sure.
I mean, we could have that chemical argument, but
that's why I'm trying to get. I'm just trying to get into like what is the point, I guess. Because like
the point is that in the two worlds, like phenomenologically, from the point of view.
Okay, let me change this slightly, and then I think we'll be on the same page. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure because I don't want to accept or reject something thinking that it's about one thing is about another thing. Let's say that there's a subject. Let's say that there's a liquid called lava lamp. And in the twin worlds, the same lava lamps exist, and they're filled with a fluid called lava lamp. But we find out that in these two different worlds, it's actually a totally different chemical, even though they functionally are the same. Like something like that would be okay, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha.
And you would say that in both of these worlds, they mean the same, despite the fact they have a different chemical composition.
Would I say they mean the same thing? I mean, yes. In one world, it means one thing.
Those words the same?
Is the meaning the same?
Meaning is social. You're not talking about the ontology of the thing. It's not the reality. H2O can be a different real chemical substance on the two different worlds, but meaning is social and created between people. So
yeah, so wait, because I don't want you to hijack my whole thing because I don't want to make sure. Okay, because I was going to say something similar. So what I would have said was when you asked me if the words mean the same thing, I think that
can I bring Marty in here too?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
No. Can we just have a discussion?
No, because she's good at cutting through the conversation, and Marty makes things 50 million times more complicated. Okay, hold on. I'm just asking the question. It's not a debate. It's not a debate. I'm just trying to clarify my views on language. Okay. So when you ask me, does it mean the same thing? Okay. I think that I need to break apart that word mean. When you say, does it mean the same thing, as in, does it refer to the same chemical realities or underlying physical reality? I would say, no, it seems to, or it obviously seems to mean two different things. But if you were to say, does it mean the same thing to the people using the word, then I would say, well, in that case, it does seem to mean the same thing. On a social level, the meaning is identical, but that doesn't necessarily map onto some true statement of reality or true description of reality.
Well, okay, well...
But this is where I would say, this is where I would also point to with my poor understanding of Wittgenstein, and I would say that the philosophy that you're engaged here is a form of a language game that's making it more complicated than it actually is, because that word meaning could mean two different things. Like, what is the meaning of this? Well, are you asking what it means to the people, or are you asking, like, what is the underlying, like, true descriptive reality fact? That's what it feels like. There's two different questions that could be asked there off the same word, is what I would feel.
The fundamental issue here is that when we just want to say, well, it's just what we mean, even like socially or meaning as use, it starts to blend a very kind of hazy line between, you know, philosophy of language and just like the study of pragmatics, which is the way that people use words, and like, you know, speech act about whether we're asking a question or whether we have an implication. I'm talking about meaning in that a word has a meaning. And that explains how we come to understand each other and communicate.
Wait, hold on, wait. Aren't you hardcore putting the cart before the horse? The word doesn't exist and then is discovered by humans. The word is invented by humans to describe a phenomenon or a thing.
I think truth comes first and then meaning comes from truth. But
wait, hold on. Wait. What do you explain that? That's a really loaded sentence. Like a phenomenon comes first, or like an object comes first and then the...
I can describe my own view if you want.
Wait. You didn't even address me talking to your question. You keep branching off into other things. Let's just stay on one train of thought, okay? So let's even go back to the Lava Lamp thing. So I would say that when you say, does it mean the same thing? I would say to the people it means the same thing, but the physical underlying thing, obviously, they're both referring to two different things. So that was my answer to that.
How do we come to know that? How do we come to know that the external thing? How do we come to know the external meaning of something without that having an impact on our soul? Like, language is just language, okay? There's not two different level of languages. If we've come to know that something externally is different than another thing, then that immediately changes the meaning of how we use those words, is what I would say to you.
Wait, how does
it might take time for that to permeate throughout the culture.
Sure, but wait, how is this contradicting anything I'm saying?
I never said it was. I was just answering your question.
Wait, so then do you agree then that when you ask me what does the word mean, that in the social sense it means the same thing, but in terms of yeah.
But when we're asking, like, meaning doesn't does meaning have different meanings?
Well, it does. It literally does in this sense, right?
Well, no, it can't. Meaning has to have one definition, or else it's completely circular.
Wait, hold on. No, that's absolutely not true. If I ask somebody, I do this in debates even. We're even doing it right now. What do you mean when you say meaning?
I'm not trying to have like a debate. These are philosophical points. The task of philosophy of language, the primary task of philosophy of language, is to elucidate an understanding of what it means to mean something. And it's a very difficult question because you can't get circular definitions. That's the inherent fear. And so people try to define meaning by ascribing meaning to reference. There are completely reference theories of meaning, where the meaning of a term consists solely in what it refers to.
Okay, then in that case, maybe I would say our issue before was the grammatical structure, not the word meaning. So when you said, do they mean the same thing, you should have added not a purpose. You should have added something in, like, does it mean the same thing to those people, or does it mean the same thing in reference to what the thing actually is? There should have been like more words added to clarify what we were talking about.
I mean, yes,
Sure.
there's a very important difference between speaker meaning, because we.
Sure, I agree with probably what you were going to say, but then that's going to go into like me saying like, oh yeah, well, are we talking about the speaker meaning in the twin worlds, or are we talking about the actual thing itself that we just happen to have like words for? Yeah.
But I don't believe that poses as big of an issue as I think you think it does. I'm happy to go down that line.
Well, yeah, why doesn't it pose a huge issue?
Well,
because in both worlds, we've got two people that are referring to the same thing using, or we got two people referring to different things with the same word. How is that not like a big problem?
Well, because they don't understand what the word is. That's what that is. We will like.
Who doesn't understand? No, that's not true. They both understand the word. It refers to lava lamp fluid.
Okay, so let's lay out like a timeline here. Okay, on the very left side, it'll be time 1 and then time 2. Okay, before time 2, no one knows the chemical composition of the lava lamp, right? On both worlds, no one's got that. No one has developed the instruments to do that kind of chemical analysis. Okay, and then after time 2, someone from World 1 goes to World 2, that's also part of the experiment, and discovers that the chemical compositions are different, and that becomes a huge sensation. Do you think that prior to time 2, that on both worlds, whenever they were saying the word lava, that they were all meaning the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, well then, that is not Wittgensteinian, that is...
Well, wait, okay, hold on, wait. I should have asked for clarification. When you say meaning the same thing, what do you mean there? That they meant the same thing insofar as they were both describing a similar thing for the function it served, or that they were meaning the same thing as in both referring to a descriptively real thing that was identical across worlds? Because those...
Okay, do you think that...
Wait, why can't you engage with that question? Why are you ready for that question?
Well, I'm trying to elucidate the question, which is namely, do you think that the word itself can have meaning independent of who is speaking it?
No.
Rem, can I ask you, can I just
Really? So if you were to come across a piece of paper, like for example, if a monkey accidentally typed out Shakespeare just by pure happenstance, none of those words would have meaning?
You're using words that have already been created by humans. No, stop. They're not. When you say type out Shakespeare, dude, all my Wittgenstein alarms are going off from the emails I've gotten, Rem. Okay, here's what they've told me. They told me that Wittgenstein at some point in his life said that all of philosophy was just people playing dumb language games, and that when they ask questions, the questions are actually meaningless when you break them down. So when you ask if a monkey types Shakespeare on a page, do those words then mean nothing just because a monkey typed it? Well, you're calling forth words that have already been created by other human speakers. So of course they mean something, but not because the monkey typed it, but because they were already created by other humans.
Mm-hmm. And those meanings have their meaning in virtue of what
other humans said they mean.
Rem, this isn't the.
Go, Joe.
Rem,
yeah.
You're not presenting the externalist position. So can I just clarify that when you talk about Putnam's externalism, you are saying that one person could claim without contradiction that two different people who have exactly the same cognitive function could say the same thing and mean different things while looking at something that they think is the same. So two people could say the same word and mean completely different things, and that wouldn't be a contradiction. As in meaning is use, as in two people with the same brain, like with similar brains, could be looking at something
That's not the conclusion Putnam makes in that paper.
Yes, it is.
Do you want to pull up the paper and we can go through it line by line?
No, that's boring as fuck, but you can
I just read it 2 days ago. Like, he's an externalist. And he believes that meaning is not just in the head. It is not purely based on linguistic agreement or language games.
That's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to tell me what you view the externalist position is. I just stated my understanding of Putnam's externalist position. So could you please clarify what, in a sentence or two, the externalist position is by Putnam?
Well, you can't do it in a sentence or two.
You definitely can.
Okay, Joe, you're coming in a little hot here. Go ahead.
I'm happy to re-explain the position I think Putnam takes away from it, which is that because we actually have this intuitive reaction to this twin Earth experiment, that in retrospect they didn't actually mean the same thing. This is the point that Putnam makes, which is that because these words were referring to something different all along, but we human beings, because we didn't have the tools, weren't fully aware of that. So if we were to look at every past instance of those words, even though, yes, there might be agreement because we haven't truly discovered the underlying chemical compound of the lava lamp or water, if you're doing the twin Earth experiment, because it refers to something different in both worlds, they are not the same meaning. Namely, meaning ain't just in the head. That's what he says. That's why he is an externalist, because meaning is mapped onto external conditions, independent of human thought.
Okay, I'm sorry for coming in hot. I'm also Australian, so just everything sounds more aggressive than it means to. Okay, so you agree that two people could use the same word, but be using that same word to refer to different things.
The same like linguistic token, or the same.
The same word.
Like,
just keep it simple. The same word.
Well, no, but that it doesn't Well, then obviously no, because we have homophones in language.
Okay, but don't worry about that. Don't overcomplicate it. Just the same word. So H2O to be referring to two different chemical substances.
You mean water?
Yeah, water to refer to two different chemical substances. The two people could do that without contradiction.
Sorry, can you repeat the whole question?
Sure. So you agree that two people could use the same word to mean completely different things without contradiction.
Are they in the same language group?
Yeah, they've got the same brain.
Then no, I'd say no.
Okay, why?
Well, because I tend to lean externalist in this respect.
That is externalist. That's Hillary Putnam's argument. I promise. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not trying to trick you. That is his argument.
Then let's pull out the paper. I have it. I can grab it.
Can you link it real quick? And is there a conclusion I can read?
The conclusion is meaning ain't just in the head.
Go to the Wikipedia page for semantic externalism.
Do not go to the Wikipedia page.
What's the name of the paper? Go. Give me the name of the paper real quick. Go.
The name of the paper
Nature of Mental States?
No, The Meaning of Meaning by Hillary Putnam.
The Meaning of Meaning.
I think it's 75.
Yep. Damn, you're criticizing my Wittgenstein shit, and you're citing me a paper that's 50 years old, Rem? Because you said Wittgenstein was too old? Wow.
No.
Not impressive.
No, because Kripke and Putnam had what's your name?
Joe.
Joe, would you not agree that Kripke and Putnam's arguments have had a drastic effect on the supposed untouchability of ordinary language philosophy in contemporary
I think definitely if you're looking at ordinary language philosophy, I do a lot of ordinary language. It's very out of vogue, but I don't think that meaning is use is ordinary language. I think that's like a foundational thing that Kripke and Putnam build on.
So I think we are trained in two completely different areas because I do not do.
You sound like a post-structuralist to me.
I'm definitely not a post-structuralist. I would be like a Davidsonian. I believe meaning is true, and the meaning of sentences are determined by the truth values of those sentences and nothing more.
Wait, this isn't a fucking paper. This is a fucking book.
No, it's in that book.
What page?
I don't know.
I thought you said you just read it 2 days ago. You don't have an estimate?
Well, I could grab my... I don't know what book you're looking at.
I'm looking at your book. I downloaded Rem's copy. What page was it in your book?
Grab my copy.
Oh my god, I've seen some of these things before. The triangle of reference or whatever. Is it called the semiotic triangle? Am I making this up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just... Maybe that's for a different stream.
Oh, also, no, I read meaning and reference, not meaning of meaning.
Oh my god.
It's the same experiment, though.
Okay, well, I don't know what page to go to. I'm not reading 350 pages right now, so I'm sorry.
Okay, I can read. Do you want to... Let's get to the very end here, if you want.
Can I... Okay,
okay,
hold on. I don't care about...
Final paragraph.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, we have now seen that the extension of a term is not fixed by a concept that the individual speaker has in his head. And this is true both because extension is, in general, determined socially, and because extension is in part determined indexically. The extension of our term depends upon the actual nature of the particular things that serve as paradigms, and this actual nature is not, in general, fully known to the speaker. Traditional semantic theory leaves out two contributions to the determination of reference: the contribution of society and the contribution of the real world. A better semantic theory must encompass both. I don't know a better rejection of meaning as use than that, because it's saying it's not just meaning as use. What do you mean? He just says it can't just be social.
It's a rejection.
It also has to be tied to the real world.
Yes, but meaning is use is tied to the real world. You're reacting to real things. Chairs are real. You're talking about chairs.
That's not. No, but that's not what he's talking about. He's referring specifically to the. Okay,
He's rejecting private language.
I'm reopening it again. I'm going to reread it.
He's rejecting private language. This I will go, Rem. I'll go because it doesn't matter.
I'm going to read this one sentence. It's a single sentence. No, it's a single sentence. Explain to me how this supports meaning as use. Okay, ready? he says,
is it the extension of our terms?
The extension of our terms depends upon the actual nature of the particular things that serve as paradigms. And this actual nature is not, in general, fully known to the speaker.
Yes, the extension of our terms. So as we develop our language, that is going to be impacted by things in the real world that we are forced to respond to. And we don't have full knowledge of that ahead of time, which is a rejection of definitional use of language.
So the meaning is dependent on things not known to society and to the social users of that language. It's dependent
yes,
also
if we're going to talk about
nature.
Things.
And so that
if we're
the
going to
meaning
talk about
is tied
things,
not to social use, but also to the real world. And the meaning of lava, liquid, or water, it... okay, you just...
Okay, hold on, stop. You guys are both tricking the fuck out of me. Stop, shut the fuck up.
We disagree.
If you, wait, no. You don't disagree. You're not even having a fucking conversation right now. If you want to reply to each other, go one thing at a time. Stop. You're both talking over each other. You're not getting anywhere in this conversation. Or I'm going to start doing the argument for both of you, and I don't know anything about this, so...
I don't know what to say. I mean, this specifically says that meaning is tied to the extension of our terms. And the extension of our terms, the actual nature, is not going to be known fully to the speaker. So
okay, can I ask a question relating to this?
Before we knew the chemical composition meant something different in both worlds. That's what his conclusion is, Joe. I don't even, like, oh, someone just messaged me. This is a PhD student who studies philosophy of language.
Marty, just say Marty. Go ahead.
It's not Marty. It's not Marty. I promise.
Okay, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you, Rem. I'm also a philosophy PhD student looking at philosophy of language using both Wittgenstein and Putnam in my PhD. So I'm not trying to trick you or say anything wrong. Yes, the external world...
You are saying something wrong. You're reading Putnam wrong, and Putnam's texts go completely contrary to what you're signing to him. You have a misunderstanding of Putnam.
Well, I disagree. But I'll go, because it doesn't matter. I don't see, the only reason I came in was to say that I do not understand how semantic externalism contradicts meaning as use. You are now very clearly going through how you think that occurs. I still think that there's an error in that. But I do have to go to work anyway, so it's not an issue. I'm not trying to upset you or like argue, like get out of book.
I'm not upset. It's fine. I just...
okay, can I ask one question related to the sentence? If you have to go, Joe, fucking leave. I love you. Bye. Okay,
bye.
Can I ask this? Here's something I don't understand, just in this one sentence, then we don't have to do this too long. So when it says the extension of our terms depends upon the actual nature of the particular things they serve as paradigms, and this actual nature is not, in general, fully known to the speaker.
Known to the speaker, yeah.
What doesn't that imply then, that the definitions or the words that you use are in some ways like use-oriented, if you don't even know the actual nature of the thing that you're using words to describe, or no? Can you explain that?
Well, so he's saying that there's two contributions. It's not one or the other, right? So not only is because we only come to invent terms based on the context that we're in, right? So from a very early stage in our language learning capacity, we start to understand water based on how it functions, right? And that, Putnam thinks, is determined by the real world, right? Because we usually learn things through a process called ostension, which is when you point to something and you say water, water, and you start to know what these words mean by repeated use, okay? But
I don't know.
Because hold on. Because water the nature of water doesn't change over time in the world, at least not for us humans, maybe over the course of millions of years, whatever. But because it's going to stay the same, it means that because water has a nature that we do not truly know, that the meaning of our words, we could have been using them falsely.
How does that sentence make sense? We use a word falsely.
Because, for example, if I said, for example,
like if if twin worlds, they both used water to refer to water, but they were referring to different things, why does it necessarily follow that one used the word incorrectly? The word was used.
If someone in ancient Greece who understood the sun as being something that was circling the earth and acted like a planet, when they said that the sun is looking really bright today, they're not referring to something different than the sun that we're now referring to, just because they didn't have full knowledge about the nature of the sun. they're still referencing the actual sun in the real world.
Wrong. That's not true. Okay, hold on. I understand. I'm cutting through all the bullshit. You're wrong. Yes, it is. Okay. You're actually incorrect. I think that is the case. That even if we use the same word sun, and even if we're referring to different phenomenon, I think as we gain more knowledge about the things themselves, I think they do.
I have my headphones in. I'm just getting water, so keep talking.
Okay, I feel like at some point they do kind of refer to different things, even if they're kind of sort of referring to the same thing, right? Like a person that's talking about the sun might have a totally different understanding of what a sun is. It's just like something that's maybe 200 yards long that's floating in the sky, and a scientist later on in life might be like they're referring to the same type of like phenomenon or sense data almost, but they could be referring to an entirely different thing in a way. No?
I mean, I think this is my fault because this used to be my view, which is that across scientific paradigms, meaning shift. I have come to reject that view as being.
Hold on.
I mean, it's a very.
I don't care about anything you just said. Talking about my argument, what I just said. Refute my argument. I don't know why you're loading it with so much random shit. Just refute that point.
I don't think that languages. I think that there's just one language.
Hold on, I don't care. I don't just.
No, I'm explaining. No, hold on. I am explaining.
Okay, it sounds like you're about to go off on a whole other thing, and you're going to give an example that doesn't relate to anything we just said. But okay, go for it. All right, I hope that it comes back to this, to the sun thing.
Because there's only one, like, for example, in ancient Greece versus now, we are still referring to the same things because when we point to something, what we're pointing at doesn't change across time, right? Do you agree with that?
My brain is destroyed. All I see are language games. That's what I'm seeing in everything you're saying. When you say what we're pointing at, you can point in the same general direction, but the actual thing you're pointing at is the understanding of that thing is going to be different across societies. So when you ask what we're pointing at doesn't change, kind of, but it kind of does.
If listen, a socialist and a fascist both point at Nick, they see two different things. They're pointing at the same person, Destiny. You agree with that?
But we're not talking about the thing itself. We're talking about the words and the language, aren't we?
They have different understandings. They have different understandings of what it is, but they have different senses. I mean, that's the key term. That's why I brought up sense and reference, right? There's a difference between the way in which we come to understand or know what an object is versus what we are actually referencing. Imagine a mountain. On two sides, there's two different groups. They call the mountain by different names, but they're still referring to the same thing. Even though one might have a myth about this mountain that has to do with the deities and they came down, and the other one believes.
When you're saying they're referring to the same thing, when you're saying they're referring to the same thing, what is the thing that they're referring to? What do you mean when you say that?
The mountain.
What does that mean to you? Does that mean every rock? Does that mean full knowledge of it down to the chemical, down to the quark? Or what does it mean when you say the thing itself?
The thing that I'm pointing towards.
No, hold on. That doesn't mean anything. That's a trick. Hold on. That's a trick of a sentence. When I'm asking you very specifically, what are they referring to? Like, what specifically are they referring to?
It is referring to the actual mountain in the world.
Okay, I disagree.
Or the sun. Let's do the sun.
Wait, no, let's do stick with the mountain, okay? They're referring to the actual mountain. I don't think that's true.
When I'm walking down the Thames River.
Why another example? We can't solve anything. We move on from example to example and we don't ever clarify. No, they're not, because examples only bring it out if we actually go through to the end of the example. But every time we're on an example, it's like, okay, well, let's do a new one and a new one and a new one, and then we never.
Keep bringing up objections that are completely off base and I wasn't expecting. So now you're completely skeptical about the process of ostension.
Okay, wait. No, I'm not skeptical. Okay, I'm gonna delete everything and I'm gonna wipe my brain and we're gonna start this part of the conversation over. We're gonna work in one example here. We're not going to change. We're going to work in one.
That's not possible. That's because language is not that simple. These are hard questions. You need more than one example for each facet of language. Language is an inordinately complex thing.
Gotcha.
If it was so simple, we could just easily learn it.
Okay.
So, if we were walking down a river and we both, do you not think we can point to the same thing just because we might be pointing to different atoms? I'd ask you, how are we successfully communicating? Clearly, we are referencing the same thing. Or, and this is my own view, by the way, because I actually don't believe in reference, we are saying true things about the same thing. We have matching understandings of the truth values of different sentences, and that's how we come to achieve agreement. But regardless of all this, my issue with the meaning as use view, and this is Putnam's issue, is that you're essentially spinning in a void. there's no contact that you're making with the world if it's all meaning as use. And also, it doesn't make sense about the way our language actually seems to reflect reality. The nature and structure of language seems to match the structure and nature of our thoughts, right? So the idea that it is just some social convention that just came out of the blue, to me, is something that's really, really, really misguided. I mean, that's the conclusion I would make towards all this.
Gotcha.
It is a lot, and I'm sorry, chat. It is a lot. I mean, this is what people spend their entire lifetime studying. I mean, it is just as complex as, the hardest math you can think of. People devise entire logics to try to understand the intricacies of these questions. And that's why I started off saying what I did, which is namely that I think it's not great to just get a few emails about a single philosopher that matches your intuitions. Because honestly, your intuitions are probably fucking wrong because you haven't studied it. My intuitions when I started studying philosophy were fucking wrong. I used to be an egoist. I used to be a psychological egoist, and now look what I am. So as I studied it, as I read an intro textbook to the subject, I thought, well, maybe my intuitions aren't so great. Maybe I should give the due respect to the people that spend their entire lives studying this subject and explore all the options, explore all the thought experiments, and see where that gets me. And that's what my recommendation would you to be. I sent you a couple of suggestions in your DMs. I'm happy to talk with you more about this again, and it might be easier over text, for example. But that's sort of what I'd say on the subject. I don't think meaning is use. I mean, meaning certainly involves use, of course. Of course it does. No one would reject that. But meaning is not just use, is what I would say. And I think that the Twin Earth experiment shows that. I mean, we can go back to we're not pointing at the same thing, but I still don't really understand what you mean by that.
Has any language ever been created by a thing that doesn't exist? Or by a thing that we can't see or interact with in any way?
I don't know.
Really?
Well, you can't ask me to go outside the human standpoint. What does that even mean?
Assuming that only humans exist in the universe, have we given names or language to describe things that we've never interacted with and have no knowledge of?
Yes, I would say, because
we can form descriptive fictional concepts, or what do you mean? What?
No. Descriptive. For example, I think of any description you want, like the tallest person in Bangladesh. I might know nothing about this person, but I'm referring to them despite having zero knowledge about them, other than just what I've introduced the term as, right? Or the inventor of the paper.
Are you really referring to are you referring to an actual thing there that you know about? Does that count? That sounds like another language game. I'm going to refer to the because you're making it sound like you're saying something, but you're not saying anything. If I were to say, do you have information about the largest star in the universe? And I say, well, yes, because I can utter the statement, the largest star in the universe has matter. Oh, cool. I know something about it. Well, I mean, you kind of have deductively, from a priori knowledge gotten to some kind of statement. But you're not really.
That's a great philosophical insight that proves this isn't just a language game. Because yes, you're pointing to an objection to that view, which is that we need acquaintance with the object in question, and that's a really hot and live dispute that people are studying right now. Entire tomes written on just.
Hold on, I don't know why you waste so many words saying things like this.
Because I know who watches you. I know what gets posted on the subreddit. I know the impact that these discussions and your casual flaunting with these ideas can have on people, which is that they can become really anti-intellectual. Because they treat these problems like it's just easy math. It's not.
You're turning more people in that direction by not engaging with the questions. Just answer the questions, or give a compelling argument
I have answered the question.
No, you jump from example to example to example to example. We haven't actually found so for instance, I haven't heard a single thing that you've said so far that's contradicted use as meaning, or meaning as use. I haven't heard a single thing that's.
You said that every single statement consists solely in the way that we use it.
I don't know if it has to be solely.
Okay, that's a different position than what you said earlier. And if that's the case, I have achieved my goal, which is now you acknowledge that meaning isn't just use, it's something other than use as well.
Well, so would somebody like Wittgenstein, or would use of meaning people, would they say that oh yeah, like when we utter words, they're not in reference to anything in the external world? Are those positions really
no,
incongruent?
They wouldn't, but the position as you, because you haven't read Wittgenstein, so
you're not, okay. All right, I love you. Anything else, Bryce?
No, but that's
no, stop! You can't give me refutations of anything I'm saying. You're just saying like you haven't read this thing. That's why I'm asking you the question. If I read it, I wouldn't be asking you. But if you can't answer my questions, then you're not equipped or prepared to answer that. No. You can't answer the question. If you can't answer, that's fine. I don't care. You can't.
I just answered it.
Okay. Let's try this.
I just said no.
Okay. So there's no contradiction between the meaning is use position and this external idea, is there?
There doesn't have to be if you can articulate it.
Wait, so then what is your problem with anything I've said or thought so far?
Because earlier you said that the meaning of any term consists solely in its use. That is what you said.
I don't know if I would say solely in its use. Like if you were to ask me, okay, I don't know if I said that or if that was your formation of what I said. Like if you're floating in a void of nothingness, I don't know if you can have a language because you can't interact with anything. I don't know if that's... Does that sound like a position that I would take? That like, oh yeah, even floating in a void of nothingness where you can't communicate with anything or see or hear or have any sense data, you would still have a language? I don't know if you would have a language there. I don't even know if one person alone in the world would have a language. I'm not sure.
In response to the Twin Earth experiment, you said that they would mean the same thing.
No, I asked you what you meant by meaning. Would they mean the same thing to each people, or would they be referring?
Yes. And so, if you acknowledge that meaning is not just use, okay, and that
wait, we haven't. You're trying to move. We didn't even define what meaning meant, and you want to move on to the next part of the argument. You can't do that. What do you mean by meaning? Do they mean the same thing? Expand on that. What do you mean by that?
What do I mean by meaning?
Yes. When you say, do they mean the same thing? What are you saying?
I am saying that when we use those in conversation, do they have the same types of truth conditions?
What do you mean by types of truth conditions?
For example, when I use the word water, think of all of the sentences that could be formed using that term in it, okay? And now consider another word, let's call it, botter or something. If they have identical truth conditions, to me, that would mean they have the same meaning.
Well, but the truth conditions would diverge as soon as you make more investigations.
Right.
So, but they were true up until you. But
social use.
But they were true up until the point.
No. The truth conditions weren't the same, though.
But that's because they didn't know.
Of course, yes.
I don't understand what you're saying. So, botter and water are referring up to the exact same thing until they investigate closer and then they realize that they're not.
No. But okay, I think this might be our very key point. The world is not changing as soon as it was always like that, just because we have it's the same thing.
Yeah, the world is not changing, but our use of the language changes once we make a deeper investigation. So how is that not meaning is use exemplified?
Okay, so let us say, for example, that a scientist, again, I'm not a chemist, a scientist made a claim about water that contradicted its actual chemical composition. But at the time, it seemed to be completely true based on our knowledge. Retrospectively, once we have more knowledge, we would say, oh, well, that was an incorrect statement because, actually it has the chemical composition XYZ.
No, it would only be incorrect. No. It would only be incorrect insofar as somebody misidentified the chemical statement before. But all the other statements of like, water can be drank and it quenches thirst, water can be swam in for recreation, the rain is made of water, those statements would all be correct. Yeah, they wouldn't suddenly become incorrect because we have a deeper understanding of the word. But now that we've fleshed out the understanding of the word, we might apply it differently depending on our deeper understanding. But that would just be more use as meaning. Or meaning as use. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I
swear to God, if you bring up another hypothetical.
No, I'm not. We're using the same hypothetical, but I'm trying to, because this might be the very crux of the disagreement.
Gotcha.
So do the T1, so after T2, we've done the chemical investigation. If someone before that time period made a statement that, looking back on it, was false, are you saying that the truth value of that statement changed from true to false just because someone in the world did a little investigation into the chemistry of water? As soon as they put their microscope down or their electron microscope, whatever the fuck you want, all of a sudden the truth value of those statements just completely changed?
No.
Okay, then it doesn't just consist in use. It was always there, regardless of what.
But the word has changed. The word has changed, though. No.
Well, no, not at this point. Someone's just looked at it.
Well, but the word, what the word is referring to now has changed into something different. It's a homophone, essentially. In a way, we've played the trick, right? Where now water is referring to something different.
Well, no, because we acknowledge that on both worlds, they have different chemical compositions, and they always did have different chemical compositions. This is my point. Just because we did a little investigation doesn't mean the world's changed. It was always there. We just needed to uncover its structure. And so the truth conditions of anything we made were always there, regardless of whether we had done any investigation or not. As soon as we started the ostensive project of pointing at water, being like, I can swim in that, I can drink that, I can freeze that, I can make that into a cloud of steam, these truth conditions mapped onto the world. And those stayed the same all the way until
okay, I'm going to ask you.
Humanity.
Okay, I'm going to do another example now. Ready?
What? Okay.
Okay. I'm looking around in the world, and I'm seeing a whole bunch of ones. Okay.
What does that mean?
I just see a ton of things that are the number ones. It's the number one. Okay. Or this is one. This is one. This is one. Like the mathematical expression one. Okay. Now let's say that
I don't understand what that, like, painted pictures of one.
No, just like somehow I can see the concept of one. There's like a one.
So you're objecting to my thought experiment.
I'm gonna go one step further, and you'll understand what I'm saying. Okay. Hold on. I'm gonna go one step further. Okay. I'm gonna call all of these numbers here on my page. I'm gonna call all of these one. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now let's say that I do like more investigations. Okay. Do you remember significant figures?
Significant figures?
Like if I write the number, one, like theoretically, this number can refer to 0.5 through like 1.49 repeating. Does that mean anything to you? Oh, fuck, or do you not understand this?
Well, it's been too long. I don't do it anymore. But well, let's do something other than numbers.
No, because this is going to be exactly, because I was going to say, let's say that we do this, and then let's say that we do, let's say that we, no, it has nothing to do with philosophy of math. Because my next question is let's say that we do more investigations, and we discover that some of these numbers are 1.0, 1.00, some of these are 1.0000, like we get way more granular with things, right? Let's say that we do that, okay? We go really deep. Does that mean that all of a sudden calling all of these numbers one was wrong? Well, no, I don't think so. Insofar as it identified some property, no, one was correct. It was one. That was fine. But when we do deeper investigations, we find out that we can be more precise and say, well, this is 1.0, 1.00, this is 1.000. Now, technically, the first number one that we had works, but when we do more investigations, we see that we can flesh that concept out more. Like, but it doesn't make all the prior statements wrong. But then I would compare this to the water thing, where like
it does because the entities are different things. The truth conditions of using those different numbers would be different.
Careful. When you say using the different numbers would be different, I agree to some extent, but discovering those differences would require us to investigate more. But now you're back at use as meaning, because it's how we would use those numbers differently that would determine the differences, right? Like if I'm dosing medication, 1 is way different than 1.00, or in a chemical setting, 1.0000. These are going to be really different numbers, but it depends on how I use them.
Okay, so for example, like imagine, I don't know, who was it that came up with the idea of one? Arabs, right?
I don't know if that matters, but go ahead.
In like Babylon or something like that, okay? We call that initial moment like the baptism. That's when we first came up with this thing and we linked it to something in the world, okay? That's the thing that you seem to not want to allow to happen, is that we can't fix it to the world. You want it to always be within the social world. My point is that, and again, I don't really understand exactly what the difference between 1.00 and 1.00 is. I don't know what the differences like that would be, which is why I was wary of the example. But I would say that for each of these, like 1.0, 1.00, I assume that there are mathematical statements that would be true using one of those and false using another. Can we just assume that? Because otherwise, I mean, they wouldn't be really...
It would depend on use. Like, let's say you're taking a medication and you need like 1 gram of that medication. and let's say it was a very low tolerance for a threshold that would kill you. Let's say that if it was off by 1/100th of a dose, you would die. You don't want to take one of that thing. You want to take 1.00. The significant figures means that there's no rounding up or down there. You're getting 1.00. It would be from, there'd be a range past that 1.00, but there'd be a range, but you would know that those first 3 figures are significant. So the threshold is important.
Yes, significant, like in science. Like you only have to round to the first. I actually know what you're referring to.
Yes,
okay.
the significant figure, yeah. So like if I needed 1.00 of a dose and somebody said, oh, this is measured out to 1, you're good. I would say that tolerance is not good. 1 could be 1.09. It could be 0.93. It could be 1.2. Like one significant figure, that's not enough. I need 1.00, all 3 significant figures, right?
No, and so, but this is where I agree, is that...
Well, but the difference between how important this is different context, use. That's what the context is use.
This is yes, but no one would ever reject that. The point is that it's not just that. That's all I'm really trying to stress to you. And again,
well, but no one,
like,
it doesn't have to.
We agreed the whole time because you've been pushing back against this idea that we're fixing to the world the entire time. You have been.
No, I'm not. So of course, there's going to be some interaction with the world. It has to be.
You objected to my son example.
Because you're saying, are they both?
To the water example.
Because you're saying they're both pointing to and referring to the same thing, but the thing that we're
the truth about.
Hold on, the thing is different, right? Like the thing that when we talk about the sun today, we mean something meaningfully different than when they referred to the sun 10,000 years ago. But you played a trick when you said, well, we're pointing to the same thing, right? Yeah, sure, we're pointing to the same thing, but what we mean when we say sun today is actually way different. It might be the same word, but if anything, it's a homophone. It's a totally different thing when we talk about the sun today versus the sun 10,000 years ago.
The fact that you can say it is like a homophone, like I completely disagree with that. That doesn't make any sense.
So when I say sun today, I'm referring to the same thing as a Greek person saying sun or 10,000 years earlier, yes. Whatever those. Okay, I think I disagree. I think I totally disagree. The thing itself never changed, but the language.
Sense. Yes, okay. Exactly. So this is what I said. The sense. So that's the traditional understanding of meaning is sense and reference. It's a combination of these two things. Okay, and reference is whatever the actual object is. And the sense is all of those social conditions, like our linguistic upbringing of how we came to get to the reference, okay? So the ancient Greeks absolutely had a different sense of the word sun. I mean, they had a different word for sun, right? It wasn't sun, it was whatever the Greek word is, obviously. But still, there's a reason why they shared, like, our truth conditions would almost entirely line up.
Wait, would they?
Of course. Well, yeah, because, oh my God, ooh, the sun is really hot, right?
No, hold on. Wait, no. The truth conditions of today would be like nuclear fusion is occurring inside the sun to power it. And the truth conditions of the past might be it's powered by gods.
Yes. I said most, like, obviously.
Wait, hold on. Not most. Almost every single truth condition would be different today than before, other than, like, it's bright and maybe one's our planet.
No, I should correct myself. The truth conditions stay the same across both. But what we think to be the truth conditions are wrong. They were wrong when they said that the sun is powered by the gods. They were wrong when they said that Apollo shot. So they were wrong about those things. The truth conditions were always the same, but they were wrong, and that's why we can say.
But why? Wait,
wrong,
why would they
have the same reference?
How can they say? How can we say they were wrong when they're just
scientific in theory? It was wrong.
Why can't they just be referring to something now with more specificity? Were they wrong when they said, "Oh, look, that's the sun. I'm referring to it," and somebody's like, "Well, no, actually, it's not the sun because you don't know what it is."
I've created a scientific anti-realist.
No, we're not even at scientific anti-realism. We're only talking about language. This has nothing to do with scientific anti-realism. We're just talking about language.
Yeah, I understand. But this is the incommensurability argument against, like, this is what you're giving, and it's what I used to give. And so I'm trying my best to try to get you the same insights I had. But, I mean, I can actually, I do have to go because I have a meeting in, like, 7 minutes. But can I give you one paper?
If it's 30, how long is the paper?
It's like 12 pages.
Oh, I'll probably read it.
12 pages. And it completely changed my entire philosophical outlook.
Okay, why just link me the paper then? Go.
Pardon?
Link me the paper then. Yeah, I'll read it.
Okay, sure, yes. But listen, I hope this has been helpful in at least refining your own. Maybe you think it's been fucking useless, but we'll see. Anyways, it was nice chatting with you, and I'm sure we'll talk again sometime in the future.
Okay, be careful, babe. I love you.
Okay, bye.
Holy Dan.